all set?
Yep.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, planning board time, and it's May 20th. We have two of our board members who aren't able to be here tonight, and we're so smart, we plan ahead. We have two alternates, so sitting in tonight and with full voting, they've been at all the meetings, so they know what's going on. We just put a plan in place, so when that happens, no one shows up and gets told, come back in a couple of weeks, because you're all very, very busy. I'm Bob Largis, I'm the chairperson, and we'll start the meeting off by, if someone wants to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the 5-6 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you very much. I need a second.
Second.
I hope everyone got to read them over.
Yep.
Any mistakes, any corrections? I'd like a motion to accept those minutes.
Yes, I have.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I abstained.
Okay,
I don't
thanks.
think I was at that meeting.
Okay.
No, so you can't. I'll sign those for you, Jen. Any filings, Jen, that we need to know about?
Yes, we have the filing for the IDA Prime Metals Common Driveway. So we'll hear that in concert with the continuation of tonight's hearing at our next meeting.
And that's it?
That's it.
It's 5. Okay, we have a Form A plan for 12 Carr Road and 18 Burton Road.
And that's kind of some
Color.
color.
Okay.
That's good.
They are updated though with the abutters information on the other side of the road. Good evening, my name is Byron Andrews, Andrews Survey and Engineering. I'm representing Kenneth Faulkner this evening. Mr. Faulkner has some land on the corner of Carr Street and Burden Road. At present, it's two assessors parcels. One is a rectangle right here, and the other is this one right here. They're both in the same ownership. And what he is interested in doing is reconfiguring those two lots into this lot here, and this one here divided by this green line shown here. It would be lot A and B. Lot A meets the zoning requirements for the R1 zone, and Lot B meets the requirements for the R2 zone. The zone line goes right in through here. So in other words, this lot would meet the zoning requirements for here, but not for this back portion, so the work would go on in the front portion. And this portion has an existing house and outbuildings, which I believe would remain.
Okay. They're currently occupied, the existing two-story wood frame building, that's a house, someone lives there?
I don't know, but I would presume so.
Okay. Good. All right. Any questions from any board members? Questions from the public? Anyone here on this? Jen, did you get to review it?
Yeah, I reviewed the plan. There was, the abutters across Carr and Burden needed to be added. Those have been added. And otherwise, I did note that the house on Lot B, as Mr. Andrews just pointed out, must be located in the R2 district. And other than that, it's good. And he has made those adjustments, as you can see on the plan he's showing.
Okay. So we're just acknowledging this filing?
Nope, you are doing a motion to endorse that Form A plan, and then you can give us whatever the new date is on that plan, Byron, the latest revision date.
The latest revision is today. Today.
So 5/20, so you just, motion to endorse the Form A plan, reconfiguring two lots, dated May 20, 19.
This plan that I have that you gave us is, 26 May 20, there's another set of plans.
That's the new.
That's the new one, okay.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
got the same original plan date, but I did date stamp it today.
Oh, got it, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Someone wanna make that motion?
Okay. I'll make the motion to endorse the Form A plan reconfiguring 2 lots dated 5/20/19.
Thank you, Michael. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? I think you get 5-0-0.
Alright, do you have an
Good job.
original Mylar or
I do.
actually? And it just needs Bob's signature, so if you wanna pop that up, that'll be quick.
And next we have a site plan waiver request for
Nope, you
207.
skipped one.
Oh, I'm
Snow
sorry.
roads.
Snow road improvements. I'm the only one that has to sign.
It's the one on the bottom, the other ones we don't need
Okay,
signatures on.
so can we sign them after the meeting and
Yeah.
send Linda over or whatever?
Yep, that'll be
Okay,
fine.
perfect.
Good, thank
We'll
you.
do those later then.
Good.
Okay,
Fine.
well, no.
Thanks for coming in. He's double shifting here.
Look at that.
Good
Oh,
time.
wow.
Good time.
Thank goodness for Velcro.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Hi.
For the record, Joe Antonolis, I'm an attorney, my office is in Milford, it's been a long time since I've been here. Hope everybody's well.
Yeah.
The applicant on this Bevilacqua Homes LLC is a client of mine, and this was initially reviewed for the purpose of making a determination that the lot that we're showing on Snow Street, it was separated by a public way from the lot on Ledge Street. They were collectively owned at one time. My client purchased it for the purpose of building a single-family home on the lot. When I first prepared my letter to the town planner in support of the position, I was not yet certain that the lot had the sufficient area to meet your zoning bylaw. So I penned the letter under the theory that it might be exempt from zoning under the grandfathering provisions of 48 Section 6. However, since Andrews was able to do the calculations, there's been a determination that the lot as it's laid out and as we believe has existed along Snow Street has in excess of the minimum area in the zone. It has over 20,000 square feet, and it has more than 150 feet of frontage on Snow Street. The question has been raised as to whether Snow Street is really a street. Our research, the first thing we did was to review the records at the town clerk's office to make a determination if Snow Street was accepted as a public way, and we produced documentation that a vote at a town meeting, in fact, approved the layout of Snow Street, and then made a determination that based on the current assessor's map, that Snow Street, as it is shown on the assessor's map, is the same as Snow Street shown on the subdivision map that was filed in 1925, I believe. In Plan Book 52, Plan 4 at the Worcester Registry of Deeds. So once we determined that the town had accepted Snow Street and that the assessor's map showed it as it was shown on the subdivision plan, my client moved forward and purchased the property, recognizing that he would most likely be obligated to improve Snow Street for the purpose of providing adequate access to the home. That would be a building inspector's decision once the determination was made that Snow Street actually is a street. So Byron has prepared a plan showing a pavement of bituminous concrete for a significant portion of Snow Street to provide adequate access to a single-family home there, and then ending the pavement and going to some kind of just a gravel base at the end. There is no one that we think needs to access from there, and I think that would be something that the planning board would want to deal with later. So that's the proposal to improve Snow Street that way. I will tell you that I have found a couple of deeds from the original developer of the subdivision to the town of Sutton, but I haven't got far enough yet through the town meetings to see how he deeded the roadway. But I have found deeds where he actually deeded what was called an old school parcel in Manchog to the town of Sutton, back in the 30s. This would have come on a little bit later, and that's where we are, seeking your approval or a recommendation to go to the selectmen to actually enter onto a public way, what we believe to be a public way, and make improvements to service the single-family home.
When you're done, will it be a public way?
It is our opinion that it is a public way now.
Okay.
Okay, it's just not an improved public way, but it was adopted by the town of Sutton at a town meeting and followed, I presume, that when it was adopted, the procedures relative to accepting public ways were followed. From the article, it looks like it is. From the research I've done on accepting public ways, it appears to have been done. Because the article itself said also to take, if necessary, to take it by eminent domain. So I believe it was covered very carefully in the town meeting article.
Thank you.
What year was that?
The town meeting vote was, had it right on front.
1937.
There it is, I have it here, I apologize.
1937.
1937, May 24th, pretty close in date, Article 6. Voted on a motion of Charles P. King. Now, what I've also done is I wondered whether Charles King may have bought whole parts of the subdivision. And so I've, started today to run him in the grantor index also. Because if you put in the town of Sutton in the old index, it doesn't come up. You put town of, it comes up the name town. And you put Sutton in, nothing came up. So I reversed it and started going and running the grantors. And I ran the name of the original subdivider, which is a Rhode Island corporation. That's where I found the deed for the old school parcel. And I have found some deeds from Charles P. King to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for significant portions of land all around here. So I'm gonna keep following through with that to provide further documentation as to the actual layout of the road. But again, what we did was we relied on the subdivision plan of record. That's what Byron has worked off of. And we relied on the assessor's map, which seemed to coincide exactly the same.
So you asked me to pursue three things with relation to this. You asked me to talk to the fire chief, you asked me to talk to the highway super, and then, based on the letter that went to Attorney Antonellis, this was forwarded to council, and I also followed up with council with respect to this letter and council's opinion on the letter. The fire, chief said that, he would prefer that everything shown on that plan be completely paved, if not, and that he would actually prefer that all of the remaining layout be paved. In terms of staging fire trucks and multiple fire trucks, should they ever need to in that way, and making sure they could support a fire truck. So that was his input, and the highway super said, whether it's a public way or a private way, if the selectmen require that to be built out in an existing public way layout, they will maintain it, whatever's there. And he said basically a standard consistent with the front part of Snow Road is at the minimum that he would want, and then he would defer to the fire chief beyond that. If it's a private way, then that'll be a different question, because he wouldn't be, he wouldn't have to maintain that. Though they do pull into, he said, the first so many feet of that, they push snow into the first, next to the existing home, to the right of the existing home. There's like a little gravel area in there, they do push snow in there right now. So they would consider that at that time. So I did send this letter to council. Council had previously received the town meeting vote and various other information on the matter. And basically what council said is what I kind of paraphrased to you in the last meeting, which is, if it's a public way, we would go to the selectmen with this proposal, and the selectmen would bless you on what you need to, if that's the appropriate standard, they would be seeking the input of the fire chief and the highway superintendent, so we've already preempted that. And they would require certain insurance requirements, indemnity requirements to do that upgrade within the town's right of way. If it's a private way, you would file a subdivision plan for the upgrade. And in any case, he believes, based on what was already submitted in terms of the recorded subdivision plan and other information submitted, that there's no merger has occurred on the lots either side of that way, whether it be public or private. It's just a matter of what process needs to be followed to to upgrade the way. So that was his opinion, and he did say today, and that's why Attorney Antonellis is still looking on it. You know, obviously the public way improvement is easier, so that if your assertion is that that public way is laid out as shown on the 1920 something plan, then if you can find that, all the better. Just pin it down.
And again, we took the presumption, maybe it is a presumption or an assumption, that if it's shown on a plan and then the assessor's map is the same as shown on the plan, and then you have a record vote from the town clerk that it is a public way. And relative to the fire chief's recommendations, any recommendation that the fire chief makes will be incorporated into the plan. We will not object to any recommendation that he makes. It's a reasonable recommendation. So while the plan shows it ending, we understand that if we were to move forward with your blessing, we will accommodate the fire chief's requests.
Jen, got just a question. Who ultimately makes the determination if it's a public way or private way? Is it?
Well, they're gonna put forward all the information that they can, and
Yep.
then, you know, we'll take whatever information exists, and we'll have a powwow with council, and, we'll either say, you know, there's enough here to consider it a public way. We did look at the highway superintendent, looked at, and we were doing a measurement on what portion of Snow Road is included on the Mass Highway Chapter 90 road list. It's a preponderance of information you can pull together to decide what's what. So we'll gather all the information we can, and then, you know, powwow with the town manager and town council and decide which way they have to go.
I was gonna say, I have another example of this. I'm going through the exact same thing in the city of Framingham, where our firm represents the Framingham Housing Authority, which is in the process of trying to build some handicap units on a parcel that they own. And one of the, where the plan was submitted, someone on the planning board said, I think the road's in your property. And so it's the exact same thing. There was a acceptance of a road layout and shown on the assessors map, and it was never built all the way. And so the housing authority has this land back here. They wanted to put some buildings here, but they can't because they're in the roadway. So they have to go there and discontinue the roadway so the housing authority can meet the requirements that the city wants them to do for handicap housing. But it's the exact same dilemma, but I'm on the other side of it over there. I was hoping it wasn't a public way, and it is. Here I'm hoping it is a public way, and I do think it is, so.
Now, how far does the road go, or the existing plan that we're talking about, how far does it go up? Is it stopped
I
at?
think it stops right about here, right, Byron?
Well, the pavement stops at the elbow, and then
Right,
there's
right,
kind of
but-
some gravel and broken
But the
soil.
existing piece that you're speaking of, the historical part,
Oh,
Right,
goes all
right
the
to
way
this
down.
lot.
it stops that lot.
Right at that lot line.
And that lot, and what's on the other side, what is on the,
The
other
land
side.
up there is owned
Yeah.
by LaForce, Dennis and Jane LaForce. It's a significant parcel of land.
it's a
and that's-
parcel land?
Yeah.
Okay, now what would be the reason for stopping the pavement and not going all the way, other than, well, I'll let you finish.
That's a good question, and I'm gonna give an answer to you as best I can. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't do the plan.
Awesome.
And I wasn't there when when my client and the engineer discussed it, but I guess someone thought that was the best way to do it.
Okay.
But if the fire chief thinks there's a better way to do it, we'll do it the way he says.
Okay.
How long is the road? The proposed road, is it 500 feet?
Oh, no.
No, I don't think so.
It's 154, I think, right?
All right,
It's,
that answers that.
yeah, it would be about that. That 154 goes from here to here.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah.
So the total length would be
154.
about 180 feet if you went from here all the way to here.
I did check that portion added to the existing snow road to make sure you weren't over 500 feet, even though there's an alternate way out. So
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
you're
Any
well
other-
under 500.
Any other questions from board members? From the public? Questions or comments?
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your time and hope that you would support a recommendation to allow us to rebuild the roadway. Thanks.
It sounds like,
Yeah, you're either going to the selectman or you'll see him again,
yeah,
and then, the board typically goes with the recommendation to the highway super and the fire chief, but if you have something you wanna add to that, if you could let him know that before he leaves.
Is the town council gonna bless it again, or look at it, or?
Yeah, they'll continue to weigh in whatever we want them to weigh in on.
Because if he has to,
Because clearly, when you,
he has to
when you
defend it.
pull onto that street, it doesn't appear there's a road there, but,
Right.
um,
It's a paper, most of it's a paper street at this time.
yeah, Paper Street has it, but it's not discontinued or abandoned and all that
No.
other stuff that people interpret
Still
differently.
there.
It's
No.
still there on paper.
I apologize. No, we believe it's all there on paper, never abandoned. It was, again, and I'm making that presumption because I have two plans that show where it is. So we presume that it is the entire length of that lot. And there is, we checked through, there's been no abandonment, and as Ms. Hager said, it is being carried on Chapter 90 funding. I don't know exactly what length it is, but the state's sending you money for that road. Okay? Probably not too
We
much.
haven't been plowing it for a long time.
Probably not too, it's been a profitable road so far, okay?
Good, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for us? We'll wait to
No,
hear.
I don't.
Yep, they're just gonna need to
So-
continue to work with Joe, he'll give me more information as it comes
Thank
up.
you for coming in.
Good, thank
I'll
you.
share all of my information with Jen, and we'll go forward based on that.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good night.
Okay,
Thank you.
site plan waiver for 207 Worcester Providence Turnpike.
207, come on up.
Hi. Good.
Let me-
207, gotcha. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You've done this before?
No.
Oh, well, I'll tell you how it works.
Okay.
And it's the same for everybody. You'll tell us what your plans are.
Yep.
After you've done that, I'll ask board members if they have any questions. And then, once we've had our questions addressed, I ask the public if there's any questions out there.
Okay.
And then it comes back to us and we check in on Jen to see if we can move forward or not, so welcome aboard. It ain't not that hard.
Introduce yourself and your
Yep.
plan is
Yeah.
up on the screen if you wanna refer to it.
Yeah, I'm Michael Carrier. I'm applying for a waiver for 207 Worcester Turnpike Road. Pretty much, I'm a landscape contractor. My primary business is a fertilizing company. I'm pretty much using the building for storage and the house for offices, which kind of coincides with what was there before. I guess it was a paving company. Pretty much the same layout, not doing any structural improvements to the property at all. Pretty much, 5, 6 employees, 6, 8 trucks, and a couple office staff. So, I'm just applying for the waiver.
Okay.
Do your 5 to 6 employees include the office staff?
No, office staff would just be like 2, so.
So 5 to 6 employees and 2 office staff?
Yep.
And those 5 to 6 employees will probably spend most of the day off the site?
Yeah, I'm sorry, they come in the morning and then they be gone majority of the day into the afternoon. It's not a retail location at all, so there's not gonna be traffic in and out.
Okay.
And the 6 to 8 trucks, what type are those?
The trucks, primarily just vans, work vans, couple pickups, but nothing large like that was there. No 10-wheelers or tri-axles.
Okay.
This was the P&M asphalt plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Site?
Contractor,
Okay. All right.
pretty much the same. I
Where
mean,
are you in business right now?
Right now, our primary location is Sturbridge, Mass. I rent 2 locations in the state.
And every year, I hate to bring it up, they call it excise, I call it extortion, but, one thing that moves us in the right direction is the fact that the trucks get registered and
Yep.
domiciled, your equipment is domiciled here, so you get that bill in the mail every year, because you're in Sutton as opposed to Sturbridge, and that, something that, because we represent everyone in Sutton, we
Yep.
wanna make sure the businesses, paying their fair share, so I don't want you to be surprised by that.
No, I mean, I'm planning on making the business certificate in Sutton, so all the vans will be registered here, and,
Okay, and for all the board members, if, we have to pretty much decide, is it basically the same type of business that's there?
I have one more thing
Yeah.
to add, to kind of tip you in one direction or the other. Michael, if you could tell them the public hearing process, the public hearing process you've already gone through with respect to moving your business to the site.
yeah, so I guess it fell into like a B2 district, and it required special use permit, which I already spent the expense of engineered plans to get it done, which really I'm not changing any use. which is required
Yeah.
if I was changing different kind of use, which I'm not, so I do have the upfront expense I did pay.
And he, most importantly, he went before the zoning board
I
of
was gonna
appeals in a public hearing. But you just finished up
Yeah.
2 weeks ago
No,
with
last
them?
Thursday.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
different public hearings.
Yeah, two different ones, yes, it got extended.
Notification to all the same people that would have been notified of site plan review. So that's kind of, even despite the fact that what he's proposing is, no more than, but maybe even less intensive than the previous use. He's in fact already gone through a public hearing just with a different board, but the same people were notified and had a chance to input.
But it was only one public hearing, was it?
Yeah, for the special permit, right.
It might have been 2 dates, but it
2
was,
dates,
it was
but
just
no.
for one, just for the
Yep,
special
for the
permit.
Special permit for this, yeah. Just pointing out that there were 2 nights, so people
Yes.
didn't just have one night they could have come and had comment, they have 2 different nights they could
And,
have come.
and the selectmen came, we did a site visit,
Yeah.
and met with them, and kind of just showed them what was going on, and I think the big concern was it wasn't retail, and people weren't gonna be in and out.
Mhm.
I wasn't gonna add to any, water issues or utilities or traffic to the location, so.
And what, you're just gonna add on to one unit here, or just use the existing facilities?
No, I'm using existing there, I'm not doing any
Okay.
add-ons, no expansion or anything like that, so.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone else on the board?
No.
Questions from the public? The neighbors are here? Well, that's good news.
What about outdoor storage, and if so, where?
Nope. No, everything will be inside storage in that garage.
I'll entertain a motion to waive site plan review if someone wants to make it.
And then, if you wanna put any conditions on these operations moving forward,
Okay.
also include that in the motion.
And what do you suggest, Jen? So you
I'll-
can make that motion, the standard ones,
Standard
approval of all
condition
of
number
the.
1, yeah, approval of all other or applicable boards, committee, commissions, departments. If you're not anticipating outdoor storage, so no outdoor storage. If you need to do outdoor storage, come back to the board.
Okay.
And
How
then,
about the number of vehicles? Limited to,
Work vehicles?
yeah, limited to,
I think, we had a report upwards of 5, 6,
Yeah.
maybe 8 in the future, I mean, it's hard to tell.
maybe,
so if
you know,
we said not to exceed 8 to
10.
10 vehicles, you'd be
10.
fine with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's an issue,
Company vehicles,
yes.
not to exceed 10 company vehicles.
I'll go with that.
Someone wanna make
What
that-
else? Anything else we should
Make
think
that
of?
motion with those conditions, you don't have to repeat them again.
And we're gonna keep all existing shrubbery and, any other changes to the site?
Not planning on plowing anything down on your site in terms of vegetation, on your site.
Oh, no.
Right. Keep whatever's existing.
You'll,
I'll make that motion.
if you, thank you.
Second.
I got a second. And if you're gonna have a new sign, it's really important to come in and show her the sign
Yes.
first before you start spending money, because there's,
Definitely.
you're in an overlay district.
What is it?
You're in an overlay district, so there's rules and regulations
Okay.
about the signs and how
Yep.
they're lit and all that other stuff.
Okay.
You want people to know you're there, if you do.
Yeah, there's already pre-existing sign, obviously I do wanna get approval for a new sign,
Yeah. It's smart to check in with Jen and talk
Yeah.
about
Okay,
what's going on. If it basically stays the same, you probably won't come back in here, but if you have
okay.
bigger plans,
And the sign company has to get permits and all that, I'm assuming,
yeah.
okay.
Sometimes people go, it sounds like you don't, but they get way ahead of themselves on the sign and then come in here and they're told you can't do it, it's too big,
Okay.
it's lit wrong, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we don't want you to go there. Stay in touch, she's very available.
Okay.
So we have a motion, and we have a second.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Welcome to town.
Okay,
luck.
thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck to you.
I had Bill as the motion, who was the second? Wally?
Right there, Wally,
Excellent.
on top of things.
Thank you.
And now we have a use determination for 69 Dudley Road, contractor other. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Dave Conner from the United States Services.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You heard how it works, so I don't have to repeat all that.
I've learned
Okay.
through the
How we
process
doing?
here.
Okay.
Well.
All right, good. Thanks. We need to hear that once in a while. Go ahead.
Sure, so I think what we're looking here is to see if we fall under this G8 for other contractor use. We're looking to make a determination whether or not we lease this space, and there's some bigger plans. Right now, we're looking at about 10,000 square feet and 2.5 acres of outdoor storage. And at this point, we just want to make sure that our use is acceptable under G8.
Okay, if you look up at the screen, you may recognize a property at the corner of, well, I won't even say at the corner, that straddles Dudley Road and Harback Road. The main parcel, which is labeled 132, is 15 Harback Road, that is Package Steel Industries. And then you have two buildings over on Dudley Road, that is number 69 and 71 Dudley Road. These two parcels are owned by the same parties. I've shown both parcels, even though Mr. Conant just wants to rent a portion of 69 Dudley, which is one of the two buildings to the south on that Dudley Road parcel. He's gonna be leasing half of that building. He will also be using a portion of the area behind that site, and I'm gonna show you what he's gonna be using and leasing, as well as, yes, that's the part of the building he would lease, that's the storage he would lease. So you can see I've shown you both parcels because the large yard area that no longer has that roof structure,
I can feel.
exists on the 15 Harback Road parcel. So what I did do, consistent with other multi-tenant parcels, is contact the owners and look at some records to see what currently exists on the site. 71 Dudley Road, which is the building north of where he'll be leasing, currently has Allison Engineering. They do forensic engineering. Say somebody's constructing a big tall building with a crane and the crane topples over and somebody dies. They're the company that is brought in to investigate what happened and provide that report to the insurance company. So Allison Engineering is located inside 71 Dudley Road. They have about 3,000 square feet of office space. They have about 7,000 square feet of operations and storage space. Mobile Air, they are a contractor. Basically they contract to provide compressors to all different kinds of businesses and situations. They are located in the remaining 10,000 square feet of that top building. About 1,000 square feet of their building is office. The remaining is mobile air equipment storage and warehousing. They also store units behind the building in the yard behind that building. At 69 Dudley Road, 10,000 square feet is currently used as storage for a past planning board member, but will be vacated. And so just personal kind of storage. And the remaining square footage is storage for Package Industries. That is currently located at 15 Harback Road. 15 Harback Road is purely Packaged Industries, about 8,000 square feet of offices and about 72,000 square feet of warehouse and equipment storage at 15 Harback. As you know, at least the 15 Harback uses have existed for quite some time. So I did run parking calculations on all of that. And at 69 Dudley Road, that use for the existing use would require about 10 spaces, 8 of them provided. And then it depends on what you need for the balance of spaces that would need to be provided. 71 Dudley Road needs, these are per the parking calculation tables. Would require 25 spaces. They've provided 12. 15 Harback Road would require 68 spaces. They've provided 40. Now that sounds totally out of whack, but at 69 and 71 Dudley Road, in both of those buildings, there would only be a total number of 9 employees plus however many employees you would have, and no customers approaching the site for the packaged steel storage. And then you need to tell the board how many employees and how many customers might visit your site to see how far we are off to what's actually been provided. as opposed to the parking table, which is clearly overkill. On the 15 Harback Road site, there are 40 spaces provided. There are a max of 30 actual employees and no more than 3 customers ever on that site, according to management. So they need about 33 spaces. They have 40 that are lined out or clearly individual parking spaces. They have a lot more area for more parking than that, but I only counted the ones that are lined out or clearly parking space areas. So, how many employees do you have?
Sure, so we're planning about 15,
Okay.
but it's a New England hub for us, so probably 8 of those will be on the road all the time with their trucks, so they'll be outside of the facility. So it's really a dispatch and storage sort of site for, fencing and trailers.
So 7 employees
So
roughly
7,
on
yeah,
site?
roughly 7 on site,
And do customers ever come to your site?
rare.
Okay, so no customers. So if you add the 7 to the 9, that's 16, and they've provided, between the 2 areas, there's 20 plus spaces. So, so you actually almost have enough if your 15 employees were all sitting around all day, every day.
Yeah, not at this stage, although there are plans to grow and put a 20,000 square foot location.
So, you don't need the parking table on any of these pre-existing buildings. There's certainly enough pavement to meet the parking table, but as we've always kind of tended, there's no reason to pave stuff and provide parking spaces if you don't really need it for the operations. Now, they do have a lot of pavement, obviously, because they have a lot of storage, but it's kind of in the board's hands now, considering what it was, what it has been, and what he's asking. If you think there's enough parking to make this all work, and then, most importantly, his primary request is, he's gonna now explain to you what he does for business, and if you believe he qualifies as contractor other. You have a category for, I believe, you have the use table there,
GA.
somebody, right?
Say GA?
GA.
Yeah, so there's a category for landscape contractor, it's got 3 contractors in it. And then there's a category for paving and other contractors, so it's paving and everybody else. So there's 2 different categories there.
And when we create those tables, we always try hard to create something that has what I refer to as wiggle room, something that we don't know of.
Sure.
We don't wanna have our plans so tight, cause if it's not listed, then it's not allowed. So the other lets us sit here and tell us about your business.
Yeah, so what this is a sort of, we're in the porta potty business, but this isn't necessarily porta potties. These are trailers that do have sort of VIP sort of portable sanitation, if you will. They
Okay.
get sort of trucked out to big events, the Boston Marathon, graduations, car races, everything for
They're nice.
for big events, and then they're sort of serviced on that site, and then they're brought back, fixed, repaired, and then they go back out.
And you
So
go
on the
all
screen
over-
is the trailer.
You go all over New England?
You wouldn't
All
even know.
over New England here.
You wouldn't even know what they are, correct?
Yeah.
If looking at
it's- yeah.
Or if they, I was just in one the other day when a gas station was doing a renovation, they just parked it out beside. If you didn't, if there weren't directions, you would not know what they would be.
And this is gonna be the only office in New England?
So this is the only office in New England for this division of United Site Services. We've got 120 sites throughout the United States,
You're all over the country?
all over the country.
All right. And where are you right now? Where do you operate out? Where's your business right now?
Corporate offices in Westboro.
In Westboro?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Pretty smart to move to Sutton.
Yeah.
Good business.
And how many of these would be, are these things just come and go, or they're?
They come and go. Wintertime, they're obviously, we'll have more of them on site, but hopefully during the busier season, they're out on job sites. And then the other element is fencing. So contractors, Boston Marathon again, all that sort of fencing for government work as well.
How many units are we talking?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
rough guess. You got 10,000
well,
square feet and
so-
a yard.
I mean, we're
Well,
not,
yeah, the 10,000 feet will just used sort of to service them, to sort of like fix if something's broken on it.
So the 10,000
Most of it's
is
gonna be
a
stored outside,
service area.
yeah. Most of it will be just stored outside as a trailer, and just a truck will come pick it up like a regular trailer and just drive it off-site.
we're not talking 300,000 of them.
Oh, God,
And we're
no,
not talking,
no. So the-
we're not talking 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean,
There's something in between.
sure. I mean, so for a 2.5 acre site, and you've got, these things are what, 25 feet by, 15 feet, 10 feet, something like that. So we'll store them, as many as we can at times, around the perimeter of that 2.5 acre site, the yard site.
Do you anticipate that space will be big enough to store them, like in the
Yeah.
winter when you have them all?
Oh, absolutely, yep. I can get you an accurate number.
Just a guess, how about a guess?
Well, I know we have 74 trailers in Foxborough that'll come up here
Okay.
immediately. So it'll be more than 75 and less than 150.
All right, and they'll all fit fine, okay.
They'll fit in there.
75 to 150, roughly, plus or minus.
And they will fit,
Yeah,
okay.
And they'll, are there hours of operation? Do they come in the middle of the night and take them, or do they, what are the hours, typical
No,
hours of operation?
yeah, they'll start 6 in the morning or so, come in, pick up the trailer and then drive. I mean, this will service all of New England, so most of the time, we hope that this is empty. But realistically, I don't see us having more than 75 on site at a time.
They might leave as early as 6 AM. What do
Sure.
you think the latest they usually come back on? I mean, this is
4:30 to
industrial.
5, yeah, I mean, it's
5 PM.
whatever the sort of typical hours are for them to come in and then service it. But if it comes in, it's just like a
Dropped off?
dropped off and then
There's a
they
gate,
leave.
the area's
Yeah,
locked, so no
yeah,
one can
it's
go
all fenced
roaming
off.
around. Okay. Any other questions?
So what were the 2 we were talking about here? Definitely one was, you're thinking accessory uses, G9,
No,
G8.
G8 paving and other contractor yards.
yes, because they contract.
So, yeah,
And
most of these things,
What were you saying was the possible other one?
That was the only other.
Oh, okay, all right.
I was
missed-
saying there was another category for contractors, and he wouldn't fit in that category, that other contractor category, in my opinion, though maybe he feels different.
And where is that other
I'm
contractor?
scrolling.
I'm scrolling too.
All right, so the other contractor category, G3?
I think so.
Yep, landscape contractors, arborists, and building contractors is G3.
Okay.
And so the only other category I see him fitting into is G8, paving and other contractors. And I believe, you remember, I was trying to recall, and maybe you'll recall more than me, the other business on Hardback Road that does all the platforming at, all the stage platforming.
events.
Yeah,
Same kind of thing, just staging and fencing instead of porta potties and fencing. And I think they were under contractor yard, but I don't recall.
how about this one? Where do these get cleaned and emptied?
so they're emptied on site. So we can't transport any of that
Okay.
across roads.
That makes sense.
So it's all done on site, and then it comes back. The outside gets washed
So
because
they
it
get,
gets muddy.
let's say you drop it off at the Boston Marathon.
Yeah,
Does that tank come and empty it right then,
Yep.
right there?
right there.
Now, do you guys do that too,
Yep.
or is that another
That-
service?
That's a major part of our
Alright.
business, yeah.
And then they go in with, they clean the thing, okay, so then none of that happens on
Yeah.
site,
Nope.
on this site,
Nope, no black water or
Black
whatever,
water.
yeah.
or gray water, holds gray water and
That's
black
right.
water, are they separate?
Those are two separate things, right? I think gray water's after you've already,
After
Washed it
wastewater
all.
treatment.
Right, but you
it's
have
like
two
in the
tanks.
RV, it's kinda
But
like
not
an RV.
potable.
That's right.
Clear water?
Gray water's washers, washing
Washing.
machines, things, yeah,
Hand wa-
non-sanitary wastewater, but still from a domicile or something like that.
Like,
Your sink washing.
Right,
yeah, the sink washing that we have on those as well.
so there's 2 tanks on these.
Yeah.
So,
Any
do you agree that his use fits into the category is the big fat question? And then what permit process does he have to go through? Because obviously this use does not currently exist on this site.
To help us, any comments from the public or observations of things we should be considering? We depend on you. Yes,
Are these vehicles gonna be registered in Sutton?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer if the trailers are registered in Sutton.
they could be.
They could be, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think they're currently registered, in Massachusetts, so I don't know.
You know, about that darn
Can you ask the
extortion
powers
tax.
that be? They're gonna be sitting on a site in Sutton, they probably should be
Sure.
registered.
Yeah.
I can absolutely look into that. Yes.
Thank you. When Ross Express
Good catch.
came to Sutton, we were so smart. We wanted all
We
the
thought we were
tractors.
so smart.
We all the tractors registered in Sutton, and they did, but we didn't say trailers. So they're all Maine, and, well, you know, so
They're all
we're
under New
learning.
Hampshire.
Yeah, so we're learning. Now these are trailers, so, that's just an important, source of income.
Understood.
And in a business district, and we wanna welcome businesses, that, certainly, for myself, a business that doesn't need a school bus, and doesn't need some of the stuff that, that certain businesses have ripple effects on us. This, to me, sounds like just the kind of thing that we knew would be coming up. We knew something, other contractor, this is one of those
Sure.
others, if you will. And it's very much a niche business. Are there other people that do this? Do you have a lot of competition, or?
I think the next closest national competitor is about our 12th our size, so not really.
Okay, all right.
So Jen, I'm gonna have backed up because I'm embarrassed about this question, but what is it currently zoned there?
Industrial.
Industrial. So am I missing something here? So if this is a G8, it's permitted use.
So it's permitted as of right, but permitted as of right allows you to require site plan review.
Okay.
So what it is you can't say no if you agree that it is a other contractor use.
Right.
You can't say no to him, but you absolutely can reasonably regulate him, which means making him go through the public hearing process if you think it's appropriate.
Well, I think it's G7, or G8.
I do too. I do as well.
Mike?
You know, it seems again, the same thing, right?
That seems to fit in the zoning.
All right, so now what process? Do you want him to request waiver of site plan review and get you the additional information about excise or anything else you'd like him to get you? Or do you want him to go through the public hearing process with notification to abutters within 300 feet?
I'll ask board members, to weigh in, and I'll weigh in on what my opinion is. First, you mind, Kyle?
I'd say the waiver with the conditions, the more information and the excise and all that stuff.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I would agree too. I think it is an important provision that they get registered in town because
Sure.
literally in the winter months when they're not being used, they'll be here, so, you know,
Sure.
they should,
Fair
that
enough.
should be a piece they should get with that.
Yep, I agree with Mike. The only other thing I would like to put on there, I think we've had in the past, like the fire chief might want a Knox box or something, just in case something does happen in there, they can get in there.
Oh, as far as access.
As far as
Sure,
access,
Sure.
in the event of an emergency, and maybe whatever the police think they might need, public safety agencies.
Absolutely, yep.
I concur, because I'd like to see the layout where all these things will fit, blah, 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 and then how they're gonna leave the lot, how they'll come back in, you know.
Because access is very important out here, in terms of not using Dudley
It's
Road.
not gonna go on Dudley Road.
It's all
It's on the
Hardback
other
Road
side. That's
access,
right.
because we have
Oh, okay.
issues with commercial vehicles on
That's right.
Dudley Road.
Right, because these are big.
So you're open to him applying for waiver of site plan review, but providing you with kind of a layout of units, potential layout of units on the site, confirmation that the vehicles would be registered in Sutton, and then what else do you want him?
The only other one I kind of thought, I know you kind of took a while, but then you came up with the 75 to 150. Maybe try to get a little bit
Okay,
more
yeah.
confirmation of
Sure.
the high end of that, if that's
Sure.
accurate, or maybe it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
be-
So I'm on board with my brother board members. I think site plan review shouldn't be required as long as you realize that's not a goal pass. That means you just come in and do whatever you want.
Sure.
I'd like to have you come back in with clear plans and clear numbers, and if we hear from the fire department or hear from the police department, any other boards in town that might have something that we're not thinking about that they should know, but it's important to have access to the site and a way to get in, because God forbid something happens and there's a fire.
Absolutely.
But I'm comfortable with moving forward without site plan review. It's an unnecessary expense. We want you to
Yeah.
make money in Sutton and pay your excise tax.
Right.
I can't hint enough about that.
So I will, if you wanna, be in touch with me this week, I'll get you the appropriate forms.
Great.
And then we'll run down a list of things for you, additional things for you to provide. And then we will hopefully schedule you for the June 3rd meeting to bring you through that process and get you conditioned and approved.
Great. Excellent. Thank
How
you.
fast would you like to move in, if you had a magic wand?
Tomorrow?
That fast?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thanks for picking us up.
Oh, good.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
I'll talk to you soon.
Correspondence, other? No correspondence?
I got no more.
Great, 7:10 planning board time, we can do better. We have a public hearing for IBA at 103 Gilmore Drive, site plan review, 146 overlay district, special permit. Someone want to read the hearing notice, so we're official? And that's. Right.
Is this it? Oh, right
Yeah,
here.
right there. Go ahead, you're on it, Wally.
In accordance with the provisions of the Sutton zoning bylaw, section 3.A.4, table of use regulations, IV.C, site plan review, V.D, Route 146 overlay district bylaw, and VII.A.2, special permits. The planning board will hold a hearing on the applications of IBA Inc., Millbury, Mass., on property owned by Sutton Outlook Ventures LLC of Bedford, New Hampshire. The applicant intends to construct a 70,000 square foot wholesale sales and distribution facility on property located at 103 Gilmore Drive.
Thank you. You've been here, you know how it works?
I do.
All right.
Although if I mess something up, for the
Yeah.
record, my name is Brian Melissi, I'm an engineer with Coopman and Bingham Associates, here representing IBA Incorporated. Bob Valsito, president of IBA, vice president of IBA is here with me. RP Masiello Incorporated, you'll see the plans done for him, but he will be the general contractor on the project. And I think as he said, so we are here for site plan approval, we are here for a Route 146 overlay district special permit, and we are here for a use special permit under your table of uses. Jen alluded to the fact that we also have a common driveway application in that I hopefully will be heard the next time we're in front of you guys, which will hopefully be June 3rd, I believe it is. I know we've been throwing June 2nd around, but June 2nd's a Sunday. It probably won't be. So the property is located on, it's 103, I guess is the official address, 103 Gilmore Ave. We've been referring to it as lot number 10, which is the end of Gilmore Drive. I believe this board was involved in a couple of, fairly recent filings. The Prime Metals building has gone through site plan approval, and whatever permitting processes they had to go through is now currently under construction. I believe there was an extension or a subdivision plan that was submitted to this board and again approved by this board on the extension of Gilmore Ave, which extended the cul-de-sac from this location kind of on the left side of the plan out to this location here. If you go out there today, you'll see that there's a lot of the earthwork is going on in this property here. They're using lot number 10 as kind of a staging area while they kind of swap some materials back and forth and getting this cul-de-sac constructed.
And this is the end of the industrial park.
That's it.
So the end of the
Yeah.
line. The project, I'm trying not to switch back and forth with these quite a bit, but the project that we have in front of you is for a 70,000 square foot facility. It's about a 60,000 square foot warehouse facility that'll be in the rear of the building, and a two-story office bump out to the front. If you look at this plan here, again, the plan here, plan north is kind of right due to the right here. Here's the office bump out. Here's the 60,000 square foot warehouse facility. The common driveway, and again, I know you'll hear this again in a couple of weeks, but this driveway here, portion of it that I've shown, is included on the Prime Metals approved site plan. So now they come in, they do have 360-degree access around their site. However, what we'll be doing is we'll be grabbing access off of the rear on our driveway here. So truck traffic would come in, be able to come in, make their maneuvers, back up to the docks, which will be on the westerly side of the building here. It's been designed so that it can leave in one fell sweep and leave the site. We currently have parking for visitors and for employees, kind of looping around the east and the north side of the building here. From a zoning standpoint, and the size of the building, per your calculations, we're required to have 89 parking spaces. I currently show 89 parking spaces with a little bit of a typographical error. I show 87, but the intent was to show 89 parking spaces. And if there are any questions about what IBA actually does, Bob can give you a spiel. I believe he was in front of town meeting applying for a TIF. So I'm not sure whether this board knows what IBA does, but we can certainly try to accommodate any of those questions. From their operational standpoint, they figure they need about 72 to 75 spaces. What we tried to do is show on the site plan is to show you that we can fit all 89 on site. However, when we get to the point where we're talking about a couple of plan waivers, that's one that we would like to discuss, whether it be either advantageous to ask for a reduction in the amount of parking spaces. We are going to be serviced by Town of Sutton Sewer. We're going to be serviced by a future Eversource gas line that's currently being bandied about. Right now, the plan has been revised to show an underground propane tank in this area here, 4 1,000-gallon underground tanks. In the interim, and this talking about 3 years or so until service can be provided for the IBA building, in which case all infrastructure would be put in now, and so really the transfer from propane to natural gas would be fairly seamless. Tied into the water system, tied into the sewer system. Stormwater will be handled and mitigated on site entirely, underground recharge chambers. The site itself is about 20.7 acres. And again, I don't know if I do have a copy of the subdivision plan. I could roll it out. But really only about 35% of the lot is usable. If we were to take away some of the open space area that shows on that subdivision plan, and then take away some of the building offset lines, there's only about 35% of the site that's usable. And calculates to be about 7.2 acres. So the siting of the building, we sited the building as close to the south of the lot as we felt comfortable. We're 2 feet off of the 20-foot offset line, the property line that comes between the two buildings. So we're just 2 feet off of that. And the way we lay things out, one of the waivers that we will talk about is the driveway, this access driveway in this location here, and some of the parking spots along the side encroach on the 100-foot offset to a residential district. Your bylaws is footnote number 9 in the table of uses says that the primary use has to be set back at least 100 feet from a residential zoning district. Bob's building at the closest point is 130 feet from that property line or the zoning line. Currently, as this plan shows, we're about 61 feet from the edge of pavement at the closest point. And that's one of the waivers that we will discuss. I do have a waiver letter to hand out that we go over a couple of them, but maybe more added through some of the comments and whatnot that we go through. We are in the Route 146 overlay district. The architect, the project architect is Mogul Architects out of Harvard. We've worked with them a couple of times, they're very good. Bob can talk about some of the colorings and whatnot, but they've come up with this building, and a nice design, we think will fit in well with the area. I know they were trying to not so much play off the Prime Metals building, but we certainly didn't wanna look like we were the sister to Prime Metals or their baby cousin or whatnot, so they've kinda lightened up some of the colors.
So that's the change from, this is the original submittal,
No, that's old.
which is kinda swanky, but you're right, it does look like very similar to Prime Metals.
Yeah, it's in the
I
same
mean, it's very nice, but, so this is the one you wanna go with now. So let me get rid of this one. Sorry.
So I can bore you to tears with stormwater. We have received some review letters. We've seen one from Graves Engineering, they had a chance to review that. We've received one from Ms. Hager, she kind of reviewed the site from that way. We've had a few others. I believe we had fire department. We had one from Whitensville Water. And while we've made most of those changes in the office, we have not submitted those yet. What I really like to try to do is kind of make one fell swoop of revisions, plan revisions that take into account not only the department head comments, but certainly any comments that come from the board. So I know it's fairly brief, and I probably forgot more than I told you, but I'll throw it back to the, we'll go from there and take some questions.
Is IBA gonna, you're gonna move from Millbury to this site?
Yes, they are.
Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Belcito could give a summary of his business, I know there's probably a lot of people that weren't at town meeting or didn't have the advantage of the TIF proposal before the selectmen.
Well, for the past 60 years, basically, we've been in the dairy farm supply business. And our business is not conducted mostly here, it's really conducted mostly by our distributor network across the country. So we're really wholesale sales and distribution in this facility. So stuff comes in, stuff goes out, mostly with our trucks, some with common carriers. And our distributors take those things and sell them direct to dairy farmers across the country. So it's, as far as a business goes, it's about as clean as you can get. It's about as quiet as you can get for off hours, because we do work 8 to 5. The warehouse works 7 to 4, Monday through Friday. There's nothing really that goes on there at night. We basically shut the lights off, and everybody goes home. We only have that one shift. And we've been doing pretty much the same thing, pretty much in that same building all those years. And we just need more space to do a little bit more of it and to grow a little bit. So it's basically more storage and more offices. I mean, I have no spare offices right now on Providence Street. I cannot add one more employee in the office because I have nowhere to put them. So we need that, and we need some extra storage so we can buy a little better. Wholesale sales and distribution is all about, can you buy this product at a better price? Well, you can if you buy more of it. Okay, and then I can sell it a little cheaper to my people and then sell it a little cheaper to the farmers. So that's what it's all about. It's just space.
What does the IBA stand for?
It actually stands for Independent Buyers Association. Okay, and that's something my grandfather came up with because he actually modeled the business after the Avon ladies, because that started about when he was starting up. And so he liked the idea of these independent people that had their own businesses, and they sank or swim by what they did, not by what my grandfather was going to do for them. So he vowed to sell them product and have them have defined areas they could work in, and they had to make their own way and be successful.
Okay. Wow. How many trucks in the fleet right now?
18 right now.
18, okay, and you know where I'm going with that?
Well, that was the part of the sale agreement, and we're roughly right at about $50,000 a year right now.
Yeah, it's
Really?
terrible,
In excess.
but we all have to do it, so.
Yeah.
How many square feet do you have now in Millbury? How big
We
is that
have, we have 25,000 square feet of warehouse and 5,000 square feet of office,
Wow.
and then we rent 10,000 feet on John Road.
Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
I just see the trucks once in a while. I never see an issue with them even rumbling through Millbury or wherever I go there, but.
They're on the pike and gone.
Yeah.
That's,
All right.
Well, they're not local delivery. I mean, they
You go
Yeah,
all the way
right for
to
the pike.
Washington State? Do you
You
go
go
all the way
camera-
across?
from this area, if you drew a line through the middle of the Dakotas all the way down to central Texas,
Yeah.
that's what we service out of here. Everything west of that is common carriers and mostly drop shipments that don't even come, product doesn't even come into Massachusetts.
You don't go into Canada? Don't go?
Not with our trucks, no.
Okay, common carriers.
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, it's, I own
Pretty cool.
a few businesses in Worcester, and we're proud to have, as an my neighbor's table talk by, they're one place, they go coast to coast.
Yep.
It's just, it's hard, it's nice to know there's a couple business models in this changing world that are still working, as long as you run lean and mean. And,
That's true.
And obviously, that's the trick. By the way, your trucks, they remind me of the Hallamore fleet. They're always clean.
I'll agree with that.
Always look good when they take off.
Well, we only take 6-year leases on the tractors, so there's no truck in our fleet that's over 6 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Hence the high excise tax.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
If you try to-
Yeah.
Oh, good, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Any other
Just
questions?
My only question on the design was, and maybe tell me if I'm right, is coming into the road, the common driveway is where the trucks would go. But there's another driveway on the other side for
Cars.
employees and cars.
Yeah.
But would that be built so that trucks, if they saw a lot of vehicles coming on a common drive, wouldn't use that to get to the back? I mean,
I think the turning radius is
Yeah,
gonna be
so what we-
tough.
okay,
we
because I mean,
kinda-
just given that the houses are near it, you know.
What we kinda did on purpose was the entrance here would be a little too tight for a
Okay,
tractor
so they
trailer.
wouldn't
If you saw
be-
UPS vehicle or something like that, you might get tight, go up and be able to make that corner.
Okay.
But it'll be signs that said all truck traffic will be directed to the rear of the
Okay.
site and then back right out and stay away from that side of the
Okay.
site.
Okay.
Along with the trucks, since, as I understand, the Prime Metals trucks will be going up to the rear of the building and then back out the other side, to the left of
And to
that
be
building?
perfectly honest, I may have misspoke there, so I don't really know if they are gonna come out around and do that, I'm not exactly.
Okay.
No, okay, so I apologize, I misspoke, so.
Yeah, no, there's a big turning area right there,
Oh, right
where
there.
that pen is.
Bump out and they go back.
And
Yeah,
so they'll go
because they
back
have
out.
remember the trucks, a lot of their trucks actually pull right into their building to crane load, and then they'll pull back out and go back out the common drive.
And I assume, and again, assumptions are not always good, that you've already talked to Prime Metals about sharing this driveway?
We have an agreement.
You have an
So
agreement?
actually,
Oh,
they have
The
a,
current landowner has a reciprocal easement agreement with
Okay.
Primetal, with Skinell Properties right now.
okay.
And that would transfer to any owner of Lot 10 or 103 Gilmore Drive.
I do have a draft of that agreement that I can leave with Jen.
Yep.
But it kind of spells out that it's not only a right to pass and repass, but also to share some utilities that are gonna be in that roadway, primarily the water. I wasn't part of the Prime Metals, but do they have oversized loads, Jen? Or just regular tractor trailer?
No, they're regular tractor trailers for the most part. Every once in a while, they build parts for machines, and they also do some assembly at their plant as well. So when they're doing a huge assembly, right now they do it outside in Worcester, if they have a big machine and then have to hire a crane to pop it onto a truck. On this one, they'll have a pulley crane system inside the building, but almost all of their stuff is loaded inside. They really think with the height of the ceilings they have and the height of that new pulley crane, they won't have to load anything outside, so.
And there's enough room for each to pass, trucks pass each on there.
That's a 30.
Well, they don't have many trucks anyways. They're only every
No.
once in a while.
No, it's not a heavy carrier, no.
I believe it.
You said like 15 a day, maybe. Maybe that was part of the process.
Yeah, I apologize for the scale of this presentation board, but I thought it was important to kind of get the whole thing there, but yeah, so this driveway is plenty wide for two-way truck traffic. And this is the last unit here.
That's
Yep.
it.
It took 15 years.
No, it started, the one was what, '03, right?
Oh, 3, oh,
03, I think, was the
maybe?
first.
Well, when
Yeah.
we started the industrial
Yeah.
park.
Yeah, I mean, we
Well,
built
two.
out the first 8 lots in 8 years, and then these 2 have taken forever.
It's been a long road with a lot of turns.
Yeah.
To be
the
here,
first
and it's
few
someone
went
that's
pretty
been here
quick.
since the beginning, so,
Yeah.
not, a brilliant planning, sitting here tonight, but, it's been a long road, with lots of things in the middle, but, I'm thrilled, to have it coming to completion, personally. Any other questions from any board members? Insight from the public?
Yeah.
Yes,
Ben Draper, 15 Barnett Road.
okay.
I'm in the butter. So I just had a couple questions about
Go
what I
ahead.
see there.
Which one is,
These up in the back, on the top.
which house is it? Which lot is it?
It would be right above the top green.
Right about, right around here, again, just cut off by the,
Well, actually, it's
right
it's
around here.
that green section that sticks up.
Yep.
Straight back.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. So in this diagram, the dark green section represents
Open space.
anything specific?
What it does, it kind of differentiates between, say, the limit of clearing and the limit of work to what's gonna get disturbed.
So it's leave as is,
Correct.
effectively? Okay. And you mentioned, so the hours of traffic, are these trucks delivering overnight to portions of New England, parts of New England, or wherever they go?
No.
No. So they strictly start after 8 and they're back in if they're coming back in by 5?
Almost all our trucks but one leave on Sunday morning or Monday morning and are gone for the week.
So they fill up and then they're gone?
Then
Okay.
they're gone for the week.
Okay. And we
And
know
any deliveries that we get of incoming product from common carriers is
normal
7 to
business
4.
hours, normal
7 to
business
4.
hours,
Yeah.
Weekend, and there's no weekend operations?
Sometimes we have a couple guys in the warehouse go in on
Sure.
Saturday morning just to reload shelves.
So not from the trucking perspective, delivery perspective?
No.
Okay. And when you said, after 5 o'clock, you can pretty much shut the lights out, does that include, perimeter lights in the parking areas?
They won't allow us to shut those off, I think, for safety reasons.
Well, there aren't any shown on these plans right now that I
Right.
can find, so, once they're on the plan, if there are any on the plan, we'll make sure those are full cut off, and that we have the right to review them after they're
Yeah.
installed, to make
That
sure.
seems to be
No, I
the
don't want
biggest-
any light encroaching anywhere else but on our.
Not you.
I mean, there's the concept of the light that shines, and then there's the concept of the light that you can see.
That you
Correct.
look into, yes.
And that's
Correct.
the biggest concern. I don't expect to have their lights lighting up my area, but the biggest concern is in the winter, especially when the leaves are off the trees, that I actually see the lights through the
Sure.
trees.
Yeah.
It sounds like noise isn't gonna be a problem, which is a nice, revelation, but, you know, and I know that the area right next to the walkers has grown up huge with evergreen, so I'm not sure what it's like further back, towards us. Mostly the woods behind us is the oaks and other deciduous stuff.
What's your first name again?
Ben,
Ben, thank you for coming in. And stay, to the applicant, because I've been sitting here too long. If you share phone numbers and business, it just makes good sense that a lot of things come up from neighbors. They can call you, and you can, and you know if you got a wrestling match on your hand or something that's gonna be taken care of. All that stuff can be taken care of without coming before the board, and, you
if
know.
if there's any trucking business that is, any more dream than this, I don't know what it would be. This is,
Right.
you know, if it has to be a distribution and trucking, this is a perfect scenario. So I'm very
And
pleased
I
with
leave
that.
that to you at the end of the meeting, you just stay in touch with the neighbors and make sure that, it's cordial and it's back and forth. That seems to work very well, and the lights will be as they want them
Sure.
when you design them, so it just becomes another.
Yeah, I don't
item
want
for
any
us.
light, I mean, there's no reason for any light to go anywhere but on us.
Because we've had in the past, boy, we've had some battles. And the two sides don't talk to each other, and so they come here and we have to referee, and that's not good playing, that's not good for anybody, so. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
If
Sorry,
there's
Ben.
any, I mean, I don't wanna hog
No,
time.
it's all yours.
My only other comment would be, I don't think there was an opportunity to have the same discussion with Prime Metals. The only, overview, or whatever you call it, review, was about the road, at least I attended that. And, there was like, okay, well, no big deal about the road, but I didn't ever hear any discussion about what their obligations were as far as the back of the lot. And I understand they have to do a much bigger navigation, I don't know what their hours are, you know, all the same concerns I raised here are
Ben,
unanswered questions with Prime Metals.
Ben,
for
I
me.
can send you the minutes from all of those public hearings, cause we did have several nights of public hearing on there.
I know that the one that we received in the mail was, we were on vacation and we got the letter after the meeting had actually taken place.
So I'll get you those
So-
minutes, and that, it does
You can
detail
go
a
on
lot of that.
vacation, it's okay. It's more
Well,
important.
yeah, I could start to wonder.
It wasn't intentional, I swear.
No, no,
But I can get you the minutes that has a lot of those answers, and then if there's anything that's not answered, let me know and I'll get
Okay.
you the answer.
I appreciate that, thanks.
Anyone else from the public? Anyone else from the board? Besides me, I'm thinking about the neighbors to the north. And you said that there's supposed to be 100 feet,
Yeah.
there's gonna be 60,
Well,
yeah,
you want me to summarize a little bit?
yeah,
So the required setback.
to the building?
No,
To
the
the parking.
required, as you know from several other site plan review projects we've done, there has been a discussion on what constitutes the principal use. Because the language is 100-foot setback from the zone line to the principal use. And the way the board, past boards, of which at least you have been on those past boards, have interpreted that is not just the building, but the parking that is also required, that the use cannot operate without. Because you can't have most businesses without the required parking for the business. So the interpretation in the past has been the principal use includes the structure and any required parking and circulation for that structure. So while his building is 130 from the zone line, the pavement edge is 60.
That's the smallest piece, at the minimum piece.
Yeah, 130, and then the minimal separation of pavement is what, 61?
61. And that's it, and it only gets bigger from there.
Right, so he's
Probably
over the zoning setback, which I believe is a max of 40 or, actually, those are sides, so 20. The zoning setback is only 20 feet, so he's well over the zoning setback. This is just the footnote setback from in the OLI district, because this is office light industrial. Only in that district do we require the 100 feet to the principal use.
But the setback on the side setback, 20 feet, that is to the driveway.
That's to disturbance. Oh, yeah, to driveway,
That is
yeah.
the driveway, not,
Actually, no, I think you can have circulation in that setback, maybe not, you might have to upgrade, or, you can disturb the setback, but you have to, if you disturb the setback, you have to upgrade it. So,
Yeah, that was, when you
so that's
mentioned
kind
that.
of a good segue. So that'll be a waiver from the OLI district. And like I said, I probably glanced over it pretty quickly, was because of the site, we took the building and we moved it as close to the south as we could, again, 2 feet off of a 20-foot sideline. So, yep, could I move it over 18 inches? We could certainly do that, but I mean, 18 inches in the whole scheme of things. We do have the required number of parking spaces per zoning. However, the trade-off, or what we'd be willing to do, and I know it requires another waiver, would be to maybe, eliminate some of the spaces over here. We would still need the driveway. This is designed as a comfortable radius, but if we pull that in any tighter, snow plowing becomes an issue and whatnot, and I would say that that's really not a very good site design. And then we tried to provide some green screen at the top of the slope here. We are about 35 feet higher from our ground elevation in this area to the ground elevation at the nearest dwelling. So we are or vaulted up about 35 feet from their yard elevation.
Right.
I go into the property, this area here is all kind of full of, it's full of kind of brushy pine and whatnot. It's a pretty decent buffer zone now. I understand that, you know, they would have every right in the world to come and do something on their property a lot closer. But if you were to walk out there today, there is a fairly good dense screen there.
Well, and it's something that is, as a planning board, we'll have to address, and, I mean, I personally wanna find a way to move it forward, and if it's, 30 feet or 40 feet in part of this area, if there's a way that we can, do some stuff to make sure there's no visual or audio, something so the neighbors that they want to, you know, it'd be, it makes good sense. It's not the tractor trailers going back there.
No.
And obviously which way the cars park when they pull in, and where their headlights are, but that's just in the wintertime, because you're not there anyways.
Right, and even then, we were gonna, again, try to provide like an evergreen, or at least, you know, throw some evergreens in here along with some deciduous trees that provide a year-round green screen
Mhm.
there.
Yeah. That's why I hired you, sharpen your pencil. There's one challenge.
So you needed just a few, you didn't need many waivers, so if you can kinda go over the waivers you'd like, and if you can give him any direction on those waivers, or even vote them, then that will give him some input in terms of any adjustments he needs to make to the plan while he's addressing any of the other commentary
Yes, we
before the next meeting.
had a hand go up real quickly, I saw it. Yes.
That was me, Mr. Chairman, thank you. For the record, my name is Jeff Walsh, thank you, Brian. I'm with Graves Engineering, I'm your engineer. this board's
Representing
engineer.
us. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've been
Yeah,
here.
good to see you.
Good to be
Good to be
back,
back.
good to be back. Just wanna let you know, I issued a letter today. Basically, don't like to get the letters out just before a meeting, but we haven't had the plans too long and I'm pretty busy, so I was glad, wanted to at least get my thoughts in writing before this meeting. Quite frankly, I don't have any major issues with this. One of the stormwater basins, there's three subsurface infiltration systems. One of them's gonna have to get moved because of what we found with soil testing last week. But there was an anomaly as far as buried material in the back of the site, and makes more sense to probably move that one subsurface system. One thing that I'd like to share with you is I heard talk earlier about the required number of parking spaces and they may be considering a waiver. Something I've seen instituted in other communities is the concept of reserve parking space. You provide the bulk grading, but you don't necessarily finish it off with the gravel and the pavement. In other words, if there was an idea to eliminate some of the parking space at the northernmost end, you certainly wanna do the fill slope, there's a fill over there, get the bulk grading done. Dedicate an area of, say, rough numbers, 12 spots. Instead of building those 12 spots, just landscape them, grass, what have you, and don't put any structures there, and just don't put any utilities there that are above ground, and just leave that space so that if there is a need later on, remove some vegetation, gravel it, pave it, and you have your parking spaces. So in my opinion, if the space is allocated and if the board was willing to consider a waiver for reducing the parking spaces, knowing that there was a provision to put them back in place if there was a need, I don't have a problem with that concept at all. And the question becomes is whether or not there needs to be a mechanism that the town can require them to put it in, or do they have to come forward and do it only if they choose. That I'd leave up to the town.
Thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. The other thing that I'd like to share is during the pre-construction meeting we had, a few weeks ago for Prime Metals, I was involved, and there was quite a large number of people there. There was discussion about, concern about the ability to draw from 2 hydrants in and around that area if the large fire was being fought. Fire department was there, the water district was there, and I'm not working in a capacity of reviewing for either of those boards, but obviously I got some knowledge about water supply and so forth. Right now, this whole end of the of the project, the northernmost end, is served by one 8-inch water main connection off of a water main that runs along the emergency access road.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
Up from
It's-
Menden Road.
Right, it comes up from Menden Road, I think it's a 16-inch diameter main, very large main. And it serves NEDT, one of the facilities on the cul-de-sac. It's gonna serve Prime Metals and it's gonna serve this facility here. And the thinking, it was only discussion, but the idea was, well, what's being constructed was slightly different than what we had seen back when Prime Metals was before this board. And whether or not there's a little bit of a choke point with that 8-inch main until it comes up into this area. And one solution that might be fairly simple is to, at the end of the cul-de-sac, thank you, Brian, right about there, is to tie that loop back down to the main again. So it creates a small loop, if you will, for these three buildings up at the north end of Gilmore Drive. I'm gonna leave that to the fire department, the water district, the water company, but quite frankly, I saw that as a possible solution, if there is in fact an issue with pressure or capacity in both through that 8-inch main.
And you'll see in the Whitensville water letter, you'll see in my letter, and I'm not sure if the fire chief's is in yet or if it's in his letter yet, but them, more importantly than me, have already called for that connection. And the problem being, no processed water is used in the Prime Metals building, but it's a significant sized building with a lot of employees. And with that choke point, with only that 8-inch line trying to serve all three of those buildings, if IBA kind of at the end of the line in particular ever needed the full fire flow in their building, they might have an issue. And likewise, Prime Metals would have an issue with their any of those three buildings, just with the potable water running in the other buildings, with that tiny little choke point, could have a significant issue with enough pressure for fire flow with the other buildings just running their normal potable water. So the chief was going to require some fire flow testing, but the water district is already interested and said they want a connection to that 16-inch main. And then it eliminates any issue and any potential fire issues for any of those structures. And hopefully lowers their insurance premium costs at the same time. So they're gonna intercede and require it anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So you have a few
So like I said, so this,
potential waiver
I
requests?
put this in today, so right now, we know of 3 waiver requests that we require. I will get to the 4th one, which is really the reduction in that number of parking spaces that we kinda just talked about, but, so the first one is the table of dimensional regulations, section 3A4G2 footnote 9, which is kind of what we just talked about. The footnote says the principal use on the property has to be set back from a residential zoning district by 100 feet. While our building is, the parking in the driveway is not, and that's 61 feet away. I can read this verbatim, but it really kind of backs up what I had said, where we, again, tried to design this, we moved the building as far to the south as we could, but basically, pretty much as far to the east as we could to try to get everything out of here. Really short of putting in a longer, skinnier building, there's really, I don't wanna say there's nothing else we can do, but we're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And this is the shape of the building. I know IBA and Mogul Architects took quite some time in trying to come up with the space that Mr. Belcito needs to run his business. And so we would really like your opinion on that, obviously. I don't know how you typically do it here, Jen, by straw poll or maybe a vote
I can-
tonight.
Well, and we can, if it's helpful, I'll just ask board members to tell you what they think, if they have any thoughts at all right now. And if that's not a vote,
Certainly would be helpful,
and
because obviously.
then we can decide if we wanna vote or not, or if it's, if that's
Or if
helpful.
you need any more information, yeah.
Which way the wind's blowing, Bill?
I don't have a problem with it, especially if the building is 130 feet back. Is that what it was?
Yes.
130, and if you, like the gentleman was saying, if you maybe take out some spaces later, you know, put up the screening, I don't see a problem with the, that waiver at all.
Well,
I agree with Bill.
all right. I wanna hear from the neighbors. I don't have a problem with it, but I don't wanna meet someone at the gas station and get my head ripped off. So I wanna explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I tend to be, not having an issue with it. That's just me.
Yeah, I would agree the same way, no real issue with it,
Okay?
especially since it's a quiet piece of the property. We were talking to 61 feet, it's not the, you know, it's not where trucks are backing around and so,
Thank
I
you.
don't see.
Yeah, no issue here either.
Okay. That lets you know what we think. We can do them all, and then if you want us to vote on.
So the second waiver has to do with one of the requirements of the Route 146 overlay district. In section IV P4A3 reads that no structure, roadway, or earth disturbing activity shall be located or occur on slopes of 15% or greater. And really, most of this site historically was used as a gravel removal operation or earth removal operation. We kinda are at the end of the site, and some of the existing slopes there are greater than 15%. Mostly, again, in the northeasterly portion of the property over here. Fact of the matter, even by construction of the extended cul-de-sac here, there's a 2-to-1 return slope that'll be here. We're gonna just be working right around it and whatnot. So really in this area here, we do have some slopes greater than 15%, and we don't think we can avoid any of the earthwork over them.
What actually are they?
Allison.
I mean, if they're over 15%.
I mean, they're roughly, they kind of go anywhere from 2-to-1, which would be, 45% slope, to 3-to-1, which is a 30% slope. Some of them are a little bit more gentle than others, but it really just came from moving material around. And I think as Mr. Walsh alluded to, we were doing some soil testing the other day. And much to my surprise, when we dug the first hole right here, we had some water rushing in at about 60 inches deep. Just packing up my briefcase and going home, we were kind of all done. But as we looked around later on, found that it was really maybe just a remnant of some of the old earth operations, a tailing pile that they pushed over there and then covered it over, and it's just kind of caused a perched water table. However, when we came around to the north end of the site, poked some holes along here and along down here. It represented a lot more what we expected to find, which was some sandy soils, well-drained soils, so. I don't need to digress there. But those are the slopes. It's from the end of the world, so to speak, from the earth-moving activities.
Kyle, we'll start with you.
I don't see any issue with this at all, working around these slopes.
I should state that, and I put it in the letter here, there's some BMPs, what we refer to as best management practices during construction here. Obviously, this will be some erosion control set out at the end of the slopes or the bottom of the slope so that no erosion goes off our property. We have some plan notes. Part of the plan set, there's an erosion control plan that will provide anything 2-to-1 and over. It gets jute matting or hydro seeding. There's some processes that the site contractor can take so that some of these sites don't wash out into the neighboring properties. We will certainly be watching those and doing that as we go. I should have brought that up, that we are going to be doing all the BMPs necessary in order to keep those slopes stable until they actually have something growing on them and become stable.
Michael?
Yeah, no other comments, seems fine, again, nothing.
Okay, I'm concerned for the neighbors, the abutters, and they've, some of them have been there the whole time. So, as we move to this end, I just wanna make make sure it goes smoothly, and no one's impacted, none of the immediate abutters on the north side are impacted by any of this stuff, so if you have.
Brian, why don't you explain how there's a swale in there at the end of our property line that goes?
Right.
So, just off-site, there's a fairly large swale system here, whether it was man-made or it was natural. It was probably man-made through some of the earth removal operations, such that even stormwater that would potentially run off of this site really gets caught in that swale before it reaches their properties. And, obviously, it's just off our property, we're keeping as much of an offset as we can to that, but we won't be touching that swale whatsoever. And by mitigating our stormwater on site, really the runoff is really just gonna be contained to the grassed slopes. And so, it really is quite a large decrease in the amount of surface runoff that's gonna be coming from our side.
Wally?
I don't have any issues.
I don't have any issues either, as long as it's blessed by our engineer, the erosion control measures.
Yeah.
That's what this site was for, it's for industrial building.
That gives you a clear indication. All right. And one more.
Third one was, again, part of the Route 146 overlay district regulations, section IVP4C3D. And what the regulation states is parking lot shall generally be sited to the side or the rear of the buildings in order to minimize the obtrusiveness of large parking areas on the visual quality of the corridor. Up to 25% of the total parking spaces may be sited in the front of the building to accommodate short-term parking needs of the proposed uses. If I utilize everything from this bump out here, your regulations require breaks in the paving, to put some landscaping in and trees and whatnot. So if I use this bump out as what I'm calling my front, so this is the parking that's in the front. There's roughly, and I have the number in here, 32.5% of my total parking would be in the front yard. But again, taking the site as it is, kind of a little bit strange in the fact that we're at the end of the cul-de-sac. You know, the front is here, the building's running this way. We would have to put it to the side of the building. We can't put it on this side, there's just not enough room. And we were certainly trying not to, impact some of those abutters on the north side. So while we do have a little bit more than what the regulations call for, we're still prudent to ask for the waiver.
Phil?
No problem.
No. Issue?
I don't have trouble with that at all.
Nope, no problem either.
Nope, none from me.
And then if I just add, Mr. Chair, what I haven't put in this letter yet was that waiver request that we may reduce the amount of parking spots from what the zoning calculation would require by about, 10 to 15 spaces or so. And so when we come back here, I would expect that my letter would be amended to include that one last waiver.
Okay.
Okay.
What we will show is what Mr. Walsh brought up. I will remove the paving, I'll keep the grading as shown, I will remove the paving and I will dash in and have a call out saying for future parking. And again, that way, if for some reason this board didn't feel comfortable with that, I can certainly put those spaces back on the plan. However, if not, we can do it that way.
So,
What do you think?
As long as it addresses the proposed parking in the future, I'm fine with that.
I agree, same thoughts, yeah, just like you said, yeah.
It addresses my concerns about the 100 feet being reduced by.
So what it would add is the length of a parking spot, so it would add another 18 feet to the edge of the pavement. Well, I back that up. The aisle driveway here is still gonna be 61 feet from that very choke point here. But some of the parking, this area over here would reduce by 18 feet of the length of a parking spot, so from the 60 to close to 78 feet.
Right. Moving in the right direction for me.
so does the stormwater management calculation based upon those spaces being asphalt or
Right now, they've
down,
been.
down the road?
Right now, they've been submitted based upon them being asphalt. I would be highly surprised if they would alter them to account for grass or something else. It's not worth the effort.
So then, but if they do get paved, it doesn't affect the stormwater.
That's correct, that's correct. They already have that infrastructure in
Okay.
place.
No problem.
Brian, though, if you eliminate those spaces, your limit of clearing is not gonna change though, right?
No.
Right,
I mean,
so
again,
about what is the width, how much are you leaving untouched to the limit of
At the
clearing
worst-
roughly?
at the worst case, we're right outside of the building setback of 20 feet. And that worst case, which is here, it grows as the property line kinda skews a little bit from the geometry of the project, so.
So you leave a
as you-
minimum of 20 feet untouched.
That gives you a clear indication as to how the board members feel. You wanna move forward with that, or do you want us to take formal votes?
Like, you have to take formal votes at some point. The question is, do you want them to do all the ones they're comfortable with tonight?
I just want the board to do whatever they're comfortable with. If I can leave here knowing that this one isn't gonna change, I think we know which ones are okay, which ones you might still have a question on. Whatever the board typically does, so. I can
Bob,
probably
you
didn't
said
answer that
something
question.
about wanting to know what the neighbors think. Did you have any more input?
Well, as far as the parking around that area, even if you move the parking, as long as the lights are mitigated, that's always I mean, noise and lights are the biggest concerns. You know, I think visually, the building itself may not be a problem, but if there are lights on the building or at the parking lot, that's where the impact would most likely be set. I think, you know, that parking lot being used for office use during the week, that's not gonna be a noise issue, it's mostly lights.
Okay.
So it sounds like the neighbor's gonna wanna make sure you put your 2 standard conditions you always put in there, is that you reserve the right to review the lighting and to review the landscaping post-construction and add any additional landscaping or adjust the lighting to achieve the intended screening and to eliminate any lighting issues.
And you'd have to do that review in the wintertime.
And the lighting's all gonna be on the building, right? There's no,
The majority will be on the building.
will there be poles somewhere
There will be a couple of poles, yeah.
in the front?
We will have a full lighting plan that you guys can
Okay.
look at, review, but
Well, will there be any in the back where the trucks are? No.
more than likely not. More than likely just some, you know,
Neon lights.
security wall pack lighting here,
Right.
which can actually be put down at a lower level, and the fact that, from the from the westerly abutters here, this slope is actually kind of a cut slope, so we actually sit down below
Right.
some of that existing grade here. But yeah, so by code, you're gonna have to have some lighting along the dockway, but yeah, we certainly will be throwing pole lights back out here.
You won't be.
We won't,
No, because the truck drivers will hit them.
correct. And if the truck drivers don't, the snow plows will.
Won't hit 'em with those nice young trucks.
Yeah, I plow there.
There you go.
Well,
I
like I
take that
said.
back.
Well, if someone on the board wants to make a motion to grant these 4 waiver requests, I'll entertain that.
I'll make a motion.
All 4?
I make a motion, we grant all 4 potential waiver requests, even the one we don't have here.
We have 3 and there's a 4th.
3, and then the one out
Okay.
there.
Need a second?
Second.
Any further discussion from the board?
Just wanna make
Mike,
sure
you
those
were the second?
conditions are in there.
Well, it's the second. Say that again?
Just wanna make sure the conditions of the lighting review are in there for that, and
Reserve the
the,
right to review.
yeah.
Lighting and.
Landscaping.
And landscaping.
Landscaping.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0.
Alright, you've got your waivers.
Appreciate that, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Alright, so that's that. Jeff, did you have anything to add tonight?
Nothing to add tonight. My letter just went out. I don't expect any response from the design team, the applicant's team, but my thoughts are on the table, and again, nothing major. Some engineering things to be dealt with, but they're minor in nature. And I think a few we deferred to the,
Board.
to the board and staff about 146 overlay, colors of the sidewalks, central gathering place, bicycle racks, put them out, non-vehicle traffic, the usuals we talked about for the 146 overlay district.
If it helps, Mr. Chair, typically what we do is, and again, I had said at the beginning, what we try to do is do one fell swoop of revisions. We will provide a letter to the board, mostly for Jen's files,
Point by point.
you know, stating their concerns or their comments and our response to that. It's kind of a quick housekeeping method just to make sure most of these comments, all the comments are taken care of. We will be showing a central gathering area, we'll be showing a bike rack, and some of these other things, you will be getting a lighting plan. And so some of, with the major hurdles out of the way, I know I'm not going back and reducing the size of the building or whatever we're doing, so that certainly helps, but that's on me to get to you guys before the next meeting, actually, to give these guys enough time to review it for your next meeting. And again, we're here anyways to talk about the Common Drive application.
Thank you for coming in.
You're good.
All right, good
We
job.
need a motion to continue.
Thank you.
Need a motion to continue?
I moved we continue to,
Thank you.
what was it, 3 June?
June 3rd, and let me just see what our timing looks like. June 3rd, yep, 7:10.
We'll try to be on
Planning
time.
board time?
Planning
Yeah.
board time.
We'll try very hard.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's all that general business gets in the way.
Sorry about that.
No.
Well deserved.
Okay, so who was the motion?
Wally,
Wally?
I'll second that.
thank you. Kyle,
Thank you, Kyle.
all those in favor? Opposed? Abstain.
All right,
Good
June
job.
3rd at 7
Um,
cents.
I can't promise you the stakes are still out there, but when we did go do we did the soil testing, we had rough staked the corners of the building, so we knew back where we were on the site. There's a lot of earth activity going up there, but some of those stakes may still be in if you guys ever do the sidewalks or whatever it is, so.
Oh,
Great.
good.
And if you think of anything else prior to that meeting, please let me know, and we'll try to take care of it.
And for the June meeting, because we're joking about it, can we do the general business after, if we've eaten up our 10 minutes?
Sure,
Yeah. that-
sure, you know, if there's people here for the general business, you wanna tackle the general business, but,
Yeah, no, I don't like it.
but
when
if there's
you
like
co- you- time is
minutes,
money. You
anything
guys-
that's regular board business or correspondence, we
I'll do a
all-
better job. 7:10 will be 7:10. I'll try hard to do a better job, then it gets away from me, and I apologize for that.
Oh, no.
No, well,
Been enough of these, it's not
we
easy.
should be able to handle that. Thank you.
There is an alternative, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Central Lamar for 7:10, line them up and
That's how a lot of towns do it. Yeah.
That's right, you said Worcester does that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, next.
7:30 planning board time. The Wedgewood public hearing. And
That's a continuation, so
it's a
you don't have
continuation, we have
notice.
nothing to read.
Nothing to.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Good job.
Yeah.
How do you do?
Good evening.
Did we entertain you? If nothing else? Okay. Great, welcome back.
Thank you. Randy Waterman from County Property Development LLC and Patrick Bark from WDA Design Group.
Oh, okay.
And let's see, we were here last on April 8th. And then we had a meeting continuance till early May, but some of the plans weren't done yet, so we asked to push that off to tonight. So we haven't been here in a little while, but we received comments from I think all of the boards in town and from Graves as well. And so we've spent the time diligently replying to all those comments that we received and then putting together some revised site plans, which again, went out late last week, unfortunately, so I know Jeff's office hasn't had a chance, probably even see those yet.
They hit my desk, and they're rolled up and pushed off to the side. Thank you, Randy, we didn't get them Friday afternoon.
Yeah, no, I apologize for that.
That's
So
all
it was, everything was running a little late on just getting it turned around and filed, so. But we did spend quite a bit of time on the response letter, tried to respond to all the comments diligently. I think most of them were sort of clarifying design intent more than really, issues or anything. There were a couple items on the drainage calculations that needed to be tweaked that Graves had pointed out, so those have been done on the drain calcs and on the plan, so again, a full set of the revised drawings has gone back to them for a second check. Really, the biggest project change, since we met last time and did the public hearing, was that, we were actually requested by the sewer superintendent to try and connect to the public sewer that was in the Villas project next door. And, they are interested in trying to take over the sewage pump station at the Villas, which already connects the golf course to that pump station, the entire Villas project to that pump station. And so they would like to increase the flow if they're gonna make that a public station, in order to keep costs down. The more flow, the more sewage they have going into it, going to the plant, the better. So, we've been working hard to accomplish that. There was a record sewer easement that covered the two properties that we have in front of you for our project, and that was done with the golf club years ago in Leclerc. And so that sewer easement is still intact, and it gives our two properties that we have in front of you the ability to tie into the sewer system and the sewer pump station at the Villas. And so we have given that easement to the Villas council recently, met with them last week, and he's concurred that that sewer is intact, that sewer easement, and that our project has the benefit of that. So we're trying to work with them on that, just to make it a sort of a friendly operation. We're gonna be going through their property to tie into the Wilkinsonville Water District line, and so they've, understand that that's coming. And so we're trying to, they have a bit of an issue with their emergency access easement that we believe we can correct, and we also would like to tie into their Eversource gas line. So we're really working on sort of an exchange of services, so to speak, but us adding water service to them creates a loop where now they have over a half-mile-long dead-end system. So it would be a great benefit to them to have us loop the water. And the sewer is obviously a great benefit if that becomes a town pump station instead of them as a homeowners association doing individual maintenance. So far, we've been meeting with their board and their council, and everything's gone very well. So we're working through all that, but we do have a record sewer easement that benefits our project that we can tie into them. So based on that, we have changed our plans from our initial submission, which was on-site septic systems, because we have a, formal gravel operation. So we would be taking our 3 proposed septic systems out and transferring and changing the project to public sewer system. So our entire project could tie into one small new pump station and connect to the Villas project. So it's all pretty much positive. There's some additional costs, unfortunately, we'll have to incur, just, sewer fees and other things. But I think all in all, it's a better in the long run for the project. But since we can remove those septic systems, there's a couple spots where we were able to add a few more buildings. So we went from 86 units on our original submission, we added 7 total units, so we're at 93 into this current revised submission. So it's not a dramatic change, but it helps offset some of those additional costs that we have for the sewer connection, the sewer system. Let's see, as part of the discussions that we had early on the affordable units, 10% is what is required by your code. We had originally intended to try and go a little higher than that. If we could get to 12%, that would have been on 11 units. And since we're adding a couple more units now, we thought it appropriate that we would bump it up to 13 units now, 12 total units, which is 13%. So 10% is what's in your code as a minimum. We're proposing 13%, which is 12 total units of the 93 units. And as far as the breakout, we've talked a little bit with Jen about what's appropriate and how do you divide those units out. And so what we have suggested in the resubmission that we've given you is, again, I went to the housing forum that was talking about you need smaller, more affordable units in town, so we didn't really want to make all the big ones, especially since obviously those are more hit to us, building the bigger units and selling them as affordable. So we're proposing that 5 of the single-bedroom, single-car units are affordable. 5 of the single-bedroom, 2-car units are affordable, and 2 of the 2-bedroom, 2-car units are affordable. So that seemed like a reasonable breakout, that we're leaning towards these smaller, more affordable units as our affordability component. Obviously, we're open to suggestions or discussion. The other item that results because of the increased number of units is the traffic generation changes slightly. It's not a lot. Obviously, this is a low generation, is an age-restricted unit, so it's not like a typical single-family home with 10 trips a day. So less traffic than normal. But we did ask the traffic engineer to go back and rerun the trip generation table that is in his report. He's prepared a new report that we have submitted to Jen. That's dated 5/9. Again, he reran the tables, and because of the low use and the way it's broken up into the different areas of the project, he's calculated that there would be about 1 to 2 additional vehicle trips per peak hour. So in the morning peak, there would be up to 2 additional cars. In the evening peak, 2 additional cars. So again, very, very minor in the big picture, and as far as a percentage impact on Ormsby Road, it's negligible. So he stated in the new letter that it will not change the conclusions of the original study. And then there were several requests for some new exhibits. So we really just tried to break those out into some new sheets and put those in a format that you could, understand and have them as a part of the submission package, so that later on somebody's gonna have to research it, obviously, so at least you have drawings to do that. So these, I'll just walk you through these, is probably the easiest thing. So in the traffic analysis that was provided, At each of the intersections, based on the actual travel speed of cars on Armsby, not the posted speed, but the actual travel speed, the traffic engineer had calculated that you would need about 335 feet of sight distance in each direction at each of the 4 intersections. And so I think it was Jen's comments that she had asked that we actually put on a plan so you can see where that clearing is and tell you what is being cleared, so you can understand sort of what the impacts of those clearing areas are. So this is the one, this is the northwest quadrant of the site, this is the cemetery property. So our drive, as it comes out here, Wedgewood Drive comes out, and it's right next to the cemetery piece.
Okay.
This is probably one of the tightest spots right here as you look to the the west coming off this direction. So again, from that center point out 335 feet, what is in red is the area where that line crosses, and we would have clearing to make those site improvements. In this area, there are no trees, no vegetation whatsoever, and that's what's shown on this photo up here. But you can see just the edge of the cemetery, that slope just below the wall. So we call out on the plan that that area is just to be shaved slightly. We'd like to keep the wall in shape, and we think we can actually almost make it today, but there might be a little bit of just reshaping and regrading of that slope. But there's no vegetation to be cleared at all to accommodate that 335 feet. Looking in an easterly direction, this is the guardrail that here, so as you're coming out of the cemetery, you're right at that spot, you're looking left, you can see there's pretty good sight distance right now, so there's really not much to be cleared. But we do have on the plan that this guardrail is actually pushed back to the east, and that would be relocated around the curve so that we'd ensure that you have the sight distance that you need at that location. Down on the south side, this is Newell Drive that goes into the south part of the site. This is the site where the 2 ponds are. As you're coming out, you're coming up the slope here. So this is a view looking west, and then another view looking east. So again, you can see as you're looking west in this direction, what is shown in red is the area that would be needed to be cleared outside the edge of the pavement right there. And it's mostly more brush. It's really maybe 1 maple in there, but not much more than that. And looking to the east direction, it's mostly just scrub stuff that's grown up to the edge of the road. So again, nothing really substantial for trees. Looking down at the other 2 driveways at the end, this is Route 146 here. This is Armsby as it comes out to 146. This is the Enchanted Passage bookstore. The upper driveway as it comes out to the site, right in this location, we've shown again the limits of clearing. Because of the bend in the road, you can see there's much less clearing required at this location. Looking east, there's still a fair amount, or length, you can see in here, of the red. As noted, I think in Graves' engineering report, there is 1 large tree right here at the edge. It's about a 22-inch white pine, and that's called out on the plans that would need to be removed. And that is, looks like it's just outside the wall in the right-of-way, so I think that's something that would fall under the Public Shade Tree Act. So again, that's Lily Pond Drive, and we have the pictures here. So again, looking in a westerly direction, you can see there's a couple of trees in that area, not a lot, 1 here, and I think there's another one just beyond that. And looking in the other direction, that's the large white pine that's out in the right-of-way that would have to be removed. On the south side, as you come out, looking in an easterly direction, there's actually a stone wall right in this area. You can see it right here, and there's a couple of trees in that area, and there's a couple looking in the other direction. So there's a couple of trees here that are definitely out in the right-of-way that would fall under the Public Shade Tree Act, so that will take an additional application and hearing with the tree warden. So again, we depict on the plan so you can see in advance where clearing is needed and the extent of that clearing in each case. In addition to those exhibits, questions came up about the open space, the bulk open space. We met with Jen about how, what's the best way to document that so it's on record and then it's obvious to everybody what it is. So we put together an exhibit. This is the north side. There's also an exhibit for the south side. And then we set down here, we put an offset line 10 feet off of the buildings and 5 feet off of all roads. And so basically we eliminated all the roads, driveways, the houses, and anything directly adjacent to those areas. We took that area out as all the impervious, and on the plan, what you see in green on each of these plans that I'll show you, that's the area of the bulk open space that would stay in protection. We would protect that through a recordable conservation easement, not a conservation restriction, hopefully that has to go to the state for any reason to review, but a conservation easement that would identify what can be done in there, what can't be done in there.
You know, there probably would be no livable buildings. You could probably put sheds in there with the homeowners association approval. You know, clearing would have to be controlled. Any new trails or anything to add to the trails would probably be fine, that type of thing. So this green area shown on the plan is about 17.1 acres of bulk open space. That's 76% of the total 22.5 acres that would stay as open space. The two requirements on this half in the single-family zone is 30% minimum, and in the Route 146 overlay, it's 50%, so we're well over the minimum requirement for open space. This one is the south side of the property. This one is about 34.5 acres of land area. You can see all of the open space. We have the Newell Park area that's been designated in the center of the site. These are the two main ponds out here in the front. And then we've got the gas easement that crosses through the entire property, and then everything behind that that's just being left is open space. Again, it's quite steep getting up to that in the back of the property. So on this side of the property, there's about 27.4 acres in green that are shown as the open space, and that's out of 34 acres, so that's 78% of this site that would stay as permanent open space. And the final exhibit, Jen had asked us to try and identify what exactly is being cleared in the 70-foot buffer zones that we have in the CCRC. So in the underlying zoning, the side and front and rear setbacks are all much smaller in the commercial business. So if we were doing an office or hotel or something over here, we could get closer to the lot lines. But in the CCRC, you have a requirement that buildings are 70 feet from the side lot line or front lot line. Also, buildings need to be 75 feet apart, which is, you know, very restrictive for senior housing, so we've asked for a waiver from that requirement. But what we tried to do is go out and look at the areas within 70 feet of the front, side, or rear yards where there is proposed work, where it's not already cleared from the old gravel operation, and try and identify exactly what species and size of trees that are being removed. Starting up in this northwest corner, you know, as you come in here, this entire driveway has already all been cleared. There's no trees, there's no topsoil, no subsoil. It's already been torn apart pretty well, so is most of this area. So most of the trees along here, there's, you know, some transitional species of gray birch and some other small white pine, you know, 3 to 6 inches in size. There's probably 200 of them along this 700-foot length of roadway that would be removed as part of this design, but it's really, there's an old embankment of dirt that's there, and it's just growing out of that, so they're really not anything significant. And again, the condominiums are, you know, 500 feet away and up a hill 70 feet in elevation, so. And again, in the back, there's a little bit more of, again, kind of invasional kind of species in the back. Over in this corner, there's a few more trees that are significant. There are a couple of larger oaks over here. You know, the biggest, there's 5 of them that are 16 to 20 inches over there. So there's a couple other trees over in that area that are a little nicer that would be nice to preserve. If we can, you know, warp the grading in any place and try and save a few of those, we certainly can try and do that. But most of what is over here has already been damaged. Over on this corner of the site, over in the northeast corner, right at 146, we've got quite a bit of heavy, dense evergreens out in the right-of-way. And because of the slope we're coming up to get up here, we're in a pretty good cut situation here. And this is beautiful sand and gravel at that location that we'd like to use for building roads on site. So we don't really have an ability to change the grading out here very much. So what's out here along the edge is some large white pine. There's a couple of big oaks. And over on this side, there's more big oaks over here. But there's not a lot we can do just in holding, you know, normal road grades to get up to the top of the slope here. So, and we can't raise this up a bunch and fill it, just because then we'd be filling onto the abutters and wouldn't match slope. So not a lot we can do there. The biggest area along Armsby, to me, would seem like the most important area. You know, as you drive through there, it's a scenic road. It's not listed as a scenic road in town, but it is nice. Vehicles are traveling fairly slow. It feels kind of wooded as you drive through there now. So there's some areas right in the front here where there's a couple of, we had a triple red maple in there that's about 30 inches, and a couple of other larger oaks in here. And then right at this one house in the driveway where you come out right here in the center. So again, we're just looking at what's being cleared in the 70-foot setback. There are some nice oaks in this area, some white oaks in here that are 15 to 20. There's a couple of 24 inches, 5 24-inch ones. So
There's a few areas in here where we're near grade, and we're not doing a lot of grading, that I think we could go out and locate some of those trees and look at how we could pull the grading back, maybe do some tree wells and save some of those nice trees that are, 20 inches and above possibly. And we looked at some of these probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, so some of those we couldn't really tell what condition. I think you'd ask, are they healthy? That's the first thing you look at if you're gonna save a tree, is it worth it? But
Yeah.
some of those we couldn't tell, but we would be able to now, so we do plan to go back out and look at those and see if we can't adjust that, minimize that where we can.
When you add up the numbers are big. So I think actually viewing what trees we're talking about will be much more helpful. Because if you just look at the number, you'd be like, what?
It's a lot of vegetation, yeah.
Because just the numbers, hundreds and hundreds of trees just in
Yeah.
the 70-foot setback, never mind what's necessary for clearing interior to
Right,
the
yeah.
site. It kind of takes your breath away when you look at the numbers, but I think it's very, very important to look at the condition, the
Mhm.
location, and, try to, I mean, you don't wanna denude the entire site, obviously, and where you have a good species or a good tree that's a nice size and is healthy.
Yep.
Isn't gonna be a maintenance nightmare 5 years from now, then you wanna try to preserve that where you can, I mean.
But we really pushed to put,
Mhm.
this whole section of the project is in an open meadow for the most part, but you drive through that buffer along the street to get to it, and so what's out here, there's more decent out there than there is on the entire project that's being built within that. Same thing over here, this is where most of the gravel was removed years ago, and they had the cart path that goes around the site like that. So there's probably not 20 trees that aren't small, saplings of white maple in that whole area, but out here again at the buffer zone to get in. So if we could keep some of that and make, keep that little wooded canopy would be nice, so that's what we'll do.
You're gonna add 4 units?
In total, 7 units from what we showed.
Are they shown on these plans yet, or?
Yes, these are the current updated plans, so basically what we did is back in this corner where the septic was removed, we added 2 units to this piece.
Yeah, okay.
And over here, because we tried to increase the buffer zone to the wetland, we took 2 units off of here, so the north side, the net is 0.
Okay.
And then down here, we had a larger septic system and a reserve area so that these units could all come down to this one area. So right here, we added these 6, and then just trying to adjust the grading over here at the gas line, we were able to add 1 in the corner. So 7 on the south side and net 0 on the top.
Okay. Really?
So those are essentially sort of other than the site plans that have been submitted to Graves, sort of the new plans that nobody has seen yet are these exhibits that we tried to use, I think was the easiest way to show you some of these changes and additions. We worked closely with the fire department. They had asked for some changes to the emergency access drive, so we connect all the roadways together. So about 750 feet back from the road, we are connecting to their emergency access drive for the villas right here, so that they would be able to the fire department could come in this way and go right up this way and come down this way and even go back into the site and make a loop. So that's no longer a dead end. They asked for a continuation of this driveway around here. That's one of the units that we lost here in the corner. So this is only 500 feet to here as it is, and we designed this so they can turn around here, but they asked to make that a contiguous loop. So again, we were proposing sort of a reinforced grass paver unit to get around the corner, and they're comfortable with that. And then down at this location, we had just a utility connection here. They asked to make this more of a permanent emergency access road. So with that, you really don't have dead ends. And again, there's no through traffic from vehicles coming through and driving through to get somewhere else.
When they're happy, I'm happy, I'm speaking for the board.
Yep.
Yep. You know.
And yes, I think Lieutenant Dress was gonna send you one last piece of info, and I didn't see that, but I assume you.
Like excise tax, the fire department saying, it's critical.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then I think finally, we had a waiver list in the first submission, and we've updated that and submitted a new waiver list. And basically, originally, we had one that had to deal with the septics and the number, the flow, and so all of that came out of the letter. So actually, the letter got a little bit shorter. And with the connections for the fire department, I don't think we necessarily asked for dead-end waivers, but we did ask for some other waivers in there. So that's something that we can go through in detail, or if you want me to just come back and meet with you separately when at your convenience, or whatever your pleasure.
Well, it's more about their But, you know, like with the last project, I know the time is ticking, however, I would think you wanna tackle any of the waivers the board thinks they have enough information for, especially those that are germane to your design. You know, so if there's any waivers that are critical to your design, that you're gonna need to change your design in any significant way, you wanna look at those waivers and try to get those reviewed and acted on. So, I mean, we can start running through the list if you so choose. Otherwise, we're pushing it to the next meeting, and then if you make a weird decision on a waiver,
Right, it
then you're
can
pushing
be,
it
yeah,
again.
snowballs, yes, and we're now making a filing with the Conservation Commission, because we held that off after the last meeting, just because we ended up, the emergency access drive on the south side is in the wetland area, so we have to go to Concom, so we just wanted to not file and have to pull it back and send it back in, so. But we're starting that process, so it'd be good to know that the plans as we have them so far are in good shape. And I don't know if there would be potential even to, you know, make a decision on at least the use permit for the CCRC.
Whether you think the use is appropriate at the location.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus the details.
You know, something like that would be extremely helpful, because then we know that plans aren't gonna change dramatically. You still would have to vote on the site plan review at a later date, the Route 146 overlay, the groundwater protection overlay.
But
So-
they'd be
But
making
at
the
least we
determination
know
that
that
the use
you
is
believe,
appropriate
that this
at
use is
location.
appropriate for this site.
Well, like I did in the previous hearing, I first would ask board members to weigh in, so you know which way the wind's blowing,
Yep.
and then if you want us to have a vote, I'll ask for a motion to take the vote. If you want us to hold off, if you don't like which way the wind's blowing, we can hold off, and
Okay.
if that makes sense. So it's a motion.
So you have, I think you just asked two things. Waivers,
Yeah.
about how many? Do you remember?
That are, well, we have,
A list of X.
there's, you have, you want mine, do you have an extra?
Well,
There we go, that's marked.
yeah, just counting.
There's several.
7, 8,
I mean, we can just start going through them and see how you feel about those, and then once we go through all of these,
You
then
wanna
we can
keep,
talk.
you wanna keep
No,
that
that's
right on
okay.
that one?
No, you just gotta read the numbers slow as we start to discuss them.
Oh, there's an extra, that way you don't have to rewrite anything you use.
Okay, cool. So let's start.
20-ish.
Yeah.
Some
And a lot
are
of them
pretty
will probably be,
big, but
so if we just start going through them and then, well, yeah, some of them are very quick and very easy, but
You want me to start, or just?
we gotta
Sure.
tackle it at some point.
Yeah.
I know it's late, but.
It's late, so, yeah, let's do it. If we can do it in 15 minutes, that'd be nice.
Talk fast.
All right, yeah, talk
All
fast
right.
and we'll act fast.
Item one, the first one is on site plan review. Your fees are fairly steep as they're based on construction value. So we talked early on with Jen that, you know, if we did it per the book, it's $43,000 just to file for site plan review. And consistent with other projects that you've looked at, you were able to establish an initial fee, and then if you needed more money and ran out of time, you would ask us for more. So we came to the agreement of $7,000 as the initial fee, and noted in here that if you needed additional funds, we would provide those. So that is a waiver, though.
Now, you'll remember, you can't make money off filing fees. So, it's not like we were gonna get handed a check for 43 and I said, give us 7. No. Even if he gave us 43,000, we have in our regulation, it already says, this is how much you're gonna collect that goes into the general fund for a new project. And this is how much goes into the revolving account for administrative costs, and the rest goes into a revolving account to pay Jeff primarily, and or if we need any other consultant to review his project. Any money that's left goes back to him.
So rather than us having to write 43,000 today just to even keep that afloat, we only had to write 7,000, but it is a waiver from your guidelines,
Right.
so that's.
So
why.
you just need to agree with what I already told him to do, which is just give us 7 of it up front, which is more than enough to get going on the review. And then, he's gonna have to keep providing us money if we expend all of that 7. So a nice chunk of that, say about $1,500, I believe, at least, went into the general fund already to cover my time and the department head's time.
How was that calculated, Jen?
It's set in our bylaws. It actually says exactly under site plan review, exactly what'll be pulled from the fee for each different kind of project. So that's already in the bylaw. So that was, taken from the bylaw, put into the accounts, and then we have 4,000, 5,000, something like that, sitting in the revolving account getting ready to pay him and those other
So
fees.
that's the first waiver request?
Yep. So just a motion to waive the 43,000 down to 7, and then he'll give us more.
That's good.
Just so we, what do you think, Bill?
I have no problem with that.
All right.
No problem.
I don't have any problem with it.
No problems, no.
Sounds like brilliant planning, so if I have a motion to grant that waiver and accept $7,000, and we can request more if we need it.
Mhm.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0.
All right,
Second.
next. Sorry, I
Next
delayed
item was, under, 6J CCRC, the CCRC regulations, section 4, setback and height. It says all dwelling units and group facilities shall be set back from property lines a minimum of 70 feet, and that's intended to remain in a vegetated state, whereas formal gravel pit, there's quite a bit of the 70-foot zone that's already stripped completely of wood, so we knew that we couldn't conform to that necessarily, but because those areas were cleared, that's where we've put some of the buildings, especially on the northwest side, right along the edge there to stay out of the wetland buffer zone. We pushed buildings and roads into that buffer zone since it was already cleared, so we need to have a waiver to do that and leave those buildings and roads in that 70 feet. And the other part of that is that your bylaw requires a minimum separation of 75 feet between structures. And again, with senior type housing, that's not really conducive to what you're trying to accomplish. Usually you wanna bring the buildings together so people can walk from units without having long walks. They can get out in the winter time even and walk and connect. So we have quite a bit of paths and trails throughout the whole site. But both of those were difficult on this site to really maintain. So we've asked for a waiver in both those cases.
What do you think, Kyle, about that waiver request?
Yeah, I have no issue.
Hold on just a minute, can you quantify for me? This 75 separation, less than that is consistent with the villas. I think we have as much as 20 feet, 25 feet in the villas, even in Woodbridge Heights too, I believe. But can you just point to on the plans where you are within 70 feet of the property line with houses and or structures?
This plan right here, this is the sideline that's already completely cleared, so the back side of these couple of units, that's the 70-foot line right there, so these 3 units and a little piece of that one, portions of them, so to speak. Coming up here, that 75-foot line continues back, so one little corner of that building, and 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5, just the back quarter of the building is in that 75 feet. And again, we're fighting with the wetland buffer zone on that side and the riverfront setback and pushing things just because this is completely cleared and devoid of vegetation already.
But it's got the scrubby and stuff, right? Cause that's why you have
Yes,
red
well, some of the
letters.
scrubbies right over here, what they did is they cleared this, and where they left a little dirt over on that side, everything's grown out of the dirt pile, so
Okay.
it's, you know, already pretty devoid in the entire area.
Okay,
What
alright,
it-
so that's that one.
That's on the northwest side. On the northeast side, you can see the setback line here, so on this side, we try to leave a unit as we come out here. These 2 units could be model units, so it's really a good location as you're coming into the project to have some models out there. So those 2 units are in the 70-foot setback.
Okay.
And the side yard here and the rear yard about 70 feet. So again, we met day 1 with, the owners.
Sandra.
Enchanted.
Yeah, Sandy
Sandra
Loomis,
Loomis.
and met with her and her daughter and showed them what we were doing, and they were happy with the idea that if we could ever get some utilities to them, they would be very, very happy. So they're like, yeah, we'll do a trade-off, no problem. So, but they love the look of the architecture that we're doing, so they were happy with everything that we showed them. But there's a corner of those 2 buildings there and these 2 buildings and that little corner there. There's a couple of those buildings, so again, we're pushing into that side yard setback. On the south side, it's this first unit as you come in. A little bit of it you can see here is in that 70-foot setback. And then none of the buildings here, just the roadway on this side. So we tried to push everything down, but again, to get the pocket parks we talked about before, you kinda push everything out, especially in this area. You know, we had a single road in the middle with houses on the outside originally, but to get the pocket parks and kinda focus everybody in, you end up having with more roadway. So this roadway ended up out in the 70 feet, none of the units here, and the corner of that unit right there is in the 70 feet, and that's it on that side. And that's the last one on the south side there, that piece and that piece there.
Yeah, I just wanted a visual, the
Mhm.
board to have a visual of what they're granting the waiver on.
And what about the distance between the units?
There's an absolute minimum of 20 feet between all of these. We tried to keep 30 feet where we could, but there's some areas like right in here, you see those two units are a little closer.
So that's
Those
20.
are 20 feet right there, and that unit right there is 20 feet. But many of these, you know, we tried, these certainly are over 60 feet right there. We kept those at least 40 feet in most cases, just because the width of the unit is, you know, 38, so we tried to make it a little wider in the spacing. But these units are all at least 35 feet, but side to side, the worst case is 20 feet.
Now, I don't know, obviously the fire chief's seen these plans, well, he's seen the original plans. I don't, there's not a ton of changes on the second set, or no new spacing really, even with the additional units. So, I mean, he hasn't really commented, I don't think directly on that, but he also hasn't jumped up and down and screamed and said, oh my God, those are too close.
That there's so many within 20 feet.
And my vote will be contingent upon him saying he's fine with it anyways. If I think it's fine and he says no, I concur.
Yeah.
Because he's the guy that's gotta answer the bell.
Yeah, the earlier plans that he looked at multiple times had units 20 feet apart, and his comments were more about making the emergency connections,
Right.
which we've changed all those, so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I don't see an issue if it's already cleared of granting that waiver of the 70 feet.
Okay. Michael?
I agree, no issues.
No issues.
I concur as long as the fire chief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a two-part waiver, allow units with, is it units or units and clearing, or what's how's that
In
worded?
the 70 feet,
The motion as she
it
describes
says the buffers to
Dwelling.
remain vegetated.
And you say
So
second.
anything in there, I think, would take
Okay,
a waiver to not have it vegetated and to allow structures, roads or buildings.
okay, so to allow the clearing of vegetation and structures and stuff to be placed per the plans,
Building
and to allow
and
a minimum of 20-foot separation with the approval of the fire chief.
Yes.
Make that motion,
I
Michael?
make the motion as described.
I second.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. 5-0-0. You have 4 minutes. We're trying hard. You can pick them if you want.
Yeah, I'll kind of try and look ahead here a little bit. The next one was, under the CCRC again, other objectives. One, it says it's desired to preserve environmental quality by reduction of the total area which vegetation is disturbed or cut, which I believe we have done. Work on slopes over 15% is another one that I think the earlier gentleman had mentioned. And work in the buffer area and riverway protection. Again, we've tried to minimize that wherever we can. And so other than the emergency access drive on the south, we have no work any wetland on the entire 57 acres, but that got added, so. But that does take a waiver, especially the work on the slopes over 15%. It's an old gravel pit, some of the slopes they've left are 2 to 1 now, so. But we've tried to stay off of those where we can, but there's a few spots where we are on the 15%. And we have submitted a slope designation plan that shows that in color in the package.
Okay, Bill?
I agree as long as it's blessed by our engineer to stop the erosion.
I agree. Have you guys been in front of conservation yet?
No, we waited till we had these revised plans because the fire department driveway added work in the wetland. We didn't want to
Okay.
file and then have to withdraw, so.
I
We should file that within the week.
Okay. And for myself, it's an old gravel pit, so obviously there's some corrections that need to be made, and if you don't do them now, that'd be a terrible
Yep.
mistake in planning. So I'll be ready to grant that waiver.
No issues here either.
Yep.
Yeah.
No issues.
Okay. So the waiver is to work.
Allow work.
Allow work clearing or work within the areas of the site that are 15% or greater.
You wanna make that motion, Mike?
Motion to grant a waiver to allow clearing on slopes in areas that are above 15%.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0.
Did you pop over the one above on purpose?
Well, that one was just really, I don't think it's actually a waiver, that was just the
Okay.
introduction, that
Okay.
section 4 requires certain things.
Okay.
Pick the ones that
Fine.
move you forward.
Okay.
There's others you probably know what we're gonna say anyway, so.
The next one on fees, I think we can skip that. The next one is the Route 146 overlay district. Well, that's separate on the 146. You wanna wait and do that one when we're talking about the 146?
Well, that's the slope on 15% too.
That's the same thing.
So, yeah, I mean, this is the exact same waiver, so you might as well just grant it.
So in the overlay district, which is the business zone next to 146, there's a specific requirement for slope protection. Again, anything over 15% would require a waiver. So we had asked for that waiver, so that's probably a separate vote.
Mike, you wanna make that same motion?
Again, the same motion to give a waiver for over 15% or greater for slopes
Yeah, we'll
in the overlay district.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. How we doing? Go ahead.
Excellent.
You don't know.
Let me jump over to then to the subdivision section, cause there's some things on streets that would just be good to, so under your subdivision rules and regulations, it says in the CCRC that we need to be designed to those standards. And your section for streets typically in a subdivision is 26 feet. And we talked to the fire chief early on about having the smaller secondary roads in here would be 22 feet of width with Cape Cod berms. And the main driveways that you see would be 24 feet Cape Cod berms. He was fine with that. I think Graves had commented that they were fine at the first discussion, as long as the fire chief is okay. So he's reviewed all these and approved them, but that does require a waiver, a couple of different waivers. One of them, the first one, and we list in here is for streets. The minimum center line radii of curved streets is 270 feet, which for a big wide subdivision road makes sense to have huge swooping curves. But something small like this, where we have smaller bends and it's low vehicle flow and traffic, and there's no through traffic whatsoever, we've gone to less. So minimum stopping site distance of 200 feet or curved streets of 270 feet. So we've asked for a waiver from those requirements from the regs as shown on this plan, and the fire chief has approved what we've shown so far.
Okay.
So that's the radii
That's,
and the site distance.
yeah, 1VA2F streets. That's B, the first one under B on the third page.
Got it.
Bill, what do you think?
I'm, that's fine with me. As long as, can I make the motion, or we gotta run through?
Just hold-
Well, did
Uh,
Jeff,
I'm okay.
You have your consulting engineer here, so if he has any input.
On the width of the streets, I don't have an issue with 22 foot on the smaller streets and 24 on the quote-unquote main streets. On the minimum radius, certainly a reduction from 270 feet is warranted. What I like to do in a project like this is also consider someone's moving in from out of state and they're coming in with a semi, and can we get the semi off and on the main street that provides access to a subdivision or a project such as this reasonably well? I don't expect, like an industrial park, you get them nose in, nose out, and we'll go around the building, but I try to look at from the perspective of the driver. Can you get off the, in this case, Hamsby Road, get near enough to the dwelling unit to unload the furniture? There's enough of a change to these plans that with the addition of the units and the tweaking of some of the streets, I don't have an opinion to give you right now on the latest revision. So I can't guide you right now. I've told you what I wanna look for, but I wanna have the ability, when I have the scaled plans out in front of me, to take a turning template, put it over a few of the critical intersections and just make sure I'm comfortable with the turning maneuvers. I'm looking for curb to curb, enough room to get one of these moving vans through. I'm not looking for staying in their own lane of travel.
So Bill already weighed in, and Wally hasn't.
I agree with the general concept, but I do think there are probably some, what I call issues or potential situations that, we need to
Yep.
probably look at that point in time.
Yep.
I'm inclined to say yes, but I'd like to wait to make sure that we get a
Yeah, I'm
report.
totally comfortable with that. Yeah, no problem.
Besides the fire department, I want him to be happy.
Yeah, I would, say,
Yep.
just pass on.
Yeah, we'll
But
just
that's
ta-
why we did
table
it.
Yeah.
Good thing we did that one, so you know.
Well, the width though,
The
We
width
can
is
do
a
it.
separate one, so that's the
Yeah.
one below. Maybe we
Yeah.
could hit that one or
Yeah.
even one or two,
Kind
but
of
the
comfortable.
next one, A2K, streets, location, alignment.
We'll do the width.
Roadway cross sections, that's 22 and 24.
which the fire department definitely didn't have any issues with those.
So.
They don't.
They do not.
They know.
Oh,
So
Definitely.
we have a motion to.
Make the motion that we accept the width of, either 24 or 22 feet.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. How's that? We went past 9:30.
So,
Can you live with those?
was that both of those? Width, location?
The second one's, the second one requires a 50-foot right-of-way and 26 feet, so it's it's the same, it's a separate vote though, I would say, obviously. It's a separate section of the bylaw.
Okay, so can we just add in to that last motion, Wally, do you mind if we revise that motion to also include this other section number that's about the same thing?
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
No,
I-
sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, like,
wow.
That doesn't sound right.
To the point of the 50-foot wide
Right
right
of
of
way.
way, it's irrelevant for this type of
Right,
project.
there's no
So
right
add
of
it
way.
in.
So
Thank
we're
you.
adding in IVA3, that reduces, the
Yeah.
26 feet to 22 and 24.
And at the next meeting, I'll make sure that we don't spend all that time on, I'll work hard to get us.
Is there
Okay,
anything
yeah.
else that's
Fast.
critical here?
No, I mean, I think they're all related in some respects, so I think.
You have a sense of which way
Yeah,
to
yeah, I
place.
think you're supportive and I appreciate that, and I think, it's a good project, it's a good location for it, so.
Good.
Hopefully we can figure out
Thank
something.
you for sticking around.
Good.
Do you see any reason, just so he knows, in terms of the actual use, not the details, the use of this location?
What's the zone is?
We've submitted basically for, site plan review for this project because of the size and scale, and then two separate special permits. One of them is a special permit to have a congregate use, continued care retirement community in these two zones. And then the next special permit is to have work in the overlay district at Route 146 to have the CCRC.
Right,
So we were hoping that you might be able to at least vote on the special permit for use that says that you believe that a CCRC is appropriate on this property. The other permits you wouldn't be voting on tonight, we'd come back at a later date once we've had everybody review plans.
If someone wants to make a motion.
wait. It's almost that easy. You'll recall whenever you're granting a use permit, you have to flip open to that section of the bylaw with the 5 criteria, and just make a finding on each criteria.
What are our 5 criteria?
You want me to open it?
Yeah, what
You're gonna
page
vote.
we looking at?
It's way at the end.
That's where they hide it on
It's
you.
way at the end, right, here are the 5 criteria right there. Okay?
You just put this so out of order.
What page are we
All
on?
the way to the
What
end.
page?
So Kyle, you'll make a motion
The bylaw,
that this
it
is
is
a good
page,
fit because it addresses those 5 things.
I don't even know what the 5 things are. Give me a second.
right here, page,
Page 137.
well, in Jeff's version, he might have an old
It's
version.
136 in mine.
Yeah, 136 or
You can't
137.
have an old version.
I bet not. October 16th, this is the latest on the website.
That's a good check.
Should be, yeah.
Maybe
Oh,
I have an
yes,
old
we
version.
stamped it-
Oh,
We
no.
stamped it in last month, 2 months ago.
Ooh.
I'm gonna put a new bylaw to Jeff.
So special permit, purpose, which says
Sorry, John. Sorry, Jeff.
sewage
It's
water
close enough,
systems,
that hasn't
yes.
changed.
Okay.
Just the page number.
Neighborhood, yeah.
Marijuana zone, there's a lot of those changes going on.
So, yeah, so you just look at those 4, and you're making a finding. The board finds, and then you
That's it.
read the first one and say why you agree with that for this site, or this use, I should say.
So it's the ones on the special permit
Yep,
A,
yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep,
So the appropriateness of the specific site as a location for the use.
so why do you find that this site is an appropriate location for this specific use?
Yeah.
And if so, why? It's properly zoned for it? Is it situated in a good location? Well, you know,
Easy access, zoning,
Mhm.
makes sense.
I don't see what else would possibly fit here better than.
Yeah.
Is the residential use consistent with the area?
yeah, I mean, the zoning is split zoning, business and residential, but you do have residential right up to the roadway, including Enchanted Passage, which used to be a residential structure, and then a mixed-use residential business structure. So, yeah, I mean.
And any other use wouldn't work here.
No, I think it'd be tough.
Yeah, it'd be tough to,
Well, yeah,
do
because you'd
anything.
have the potential impact on the very nearby residential neighborhood with a
Right.
commercial use in nature.
Commercial use,
You
yeah.
don't have access as limited access highway, so
Right.
if we did a hotel on this lower right-hand corner, which is zoned for it, you'd have to come off onto Armsby Road and into the site, which just doesn't, again, doesn't make sense. That's why we looked at residential from day one.
Yeah.
Which would be a bigger impact, I believe.
Yeah.
All right, it sounded like you made a ton of findings there, so number 2,
The adequacy of public sewage and water systems.
Has come, has
been
recently
addressed.
come around.
Yeah.
This is wonderful,
Yep.
yeah.
we'll
yeah,
have
yeah.
water and sewer.
That's a big difference.
Yep.
3,
The effect of developed use upon the neighborhood.
so that would be in terms of traffic primarily. And
You're right
then
off the highway,
we
so.
we're talking about view shed and kind of what we're doing in terms of clearing and what, maintaining that wooded feel as you go through, but eliminating kind of any scrubby kind of feel, especially around the pond, which might even make that a better attribute if
Yeah.
they're allowed to clean that up.
Yeah, there'd be selective clearing in there, what we call Newell Park, and that's a requirement in the Route 146 overlays to have a 5-acre common kind of park area, so that conforms to that, but, yeah,
It's
I
a
mean,
match.
It's a match made in heaven.
It's a match.
So there's minimal effect on the surrounding neighborhood and
with this type of use, I would say absolutely, because you've got 10 single-family abutting homes on the south property, and you've got the 38 condominiums in phase 3 over here in the villas, and so the only businesses that we abut are the bookstore, which used to be a residential structure, the chiropractor office, and behind that, the motel, so we're really much
Path
more.
to
First
the
to the benefit.
chiropractor?
What's that?
Did you put a path to the chiropractor? I'm just saying, that might be a
That's it.
really good business.
2 of the 3 businesses will do well if they have this kind
Yeah, the
of, they have these kind of neighbors.
Bookstores, yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
Mr. Rank is gonna be wanting a little pedestrian bridge there.
Right.
Yeah.
We can figure out something. It's steep back there, so his,
An extra golf cart.
A sled?
Yeah, like a Uber.
A 4-wheel drive.
It's a golf cart.
Right, so what's the next one?
Whether there will be undue nuance of serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians.
So again, that's traffic, so with the site distance clearings,
It'll be.
what do you
Much
think,
improved.
Jeff?
I have no issue as long as the site clearing, site distances are
met.
met, yep.
And maintained.
Absolutely. And as with a typical project like this along an old country road, vegetation needs to be cut back, usually
Yeah.
smaller stuff.
And maintained.
Yep.
And maintained, yep.
Kind of
Of vegetation.
If I remember the traffic counts, I thought they were pretty minimal. What were they,
They're
7
very
an hour
low,
at
yeah.
the peak, or?
Yeah, in the peak, I think 70 over a
Seven.
day or something, so yeah, it's small,
Right.
I mean, this is one of the lowest traffic generators there is.
1-2 a minute, I think,
And,
or something.
and when you break it up into the 4 different locations, you don't have one spot where everybody's trying to come out at rush hour onto one spot on a road. So it really works out very well the way it's divided up.
Okay.
And whether adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use, structure, or condition.
The catch-all. Funny
Just
wording.
in case.
Well, I think one of the key ones in this one, because it's gonna be a condominium, there's gonna be a homeowners association that will be responsible for maintenance, lawn care, snow removal, trash removal, that type of thing. There'll be a master insurance policy, so that's really, this type of condominium ownership dictates that you have to.
Won't be a
Right, in the
school bus
design
driving
of the
through.
facility, you already spoke on that. It's designed to kind of minimize impact and maximize enjoyment of the actual use, the living and
Yep.
recreation.
Yep,
kind of.
maximum amount of woods and open space have been retained, and we have miles of trails on the property as well.
All right, having made all of those findings,
A motion to grant the special
motion
permit.
to grant the special permit to find that this use, the CCR use, is appropriate at this specific
So I make a
location.
motion to
I'll
grant the
make that
special permit, that this is appropriate use.
Good. I need a second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Good job.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, so your
Mr.
special
Canale.
permit will be, written up, it'll go on, we have 14 days to get it on file, but it'll probably be on file in 2 or 3. And then your 20-day appeal period on that will start to,
Then can I motion to adjourn?
motion to continue
Oh, sorry,
to, again,
Probably should be 4 weeks so that we can file the notice, get that in and get in front of the commission before we come back. That way at least you'd have feedback from the commission before we come back
Okay.
again, rather than,
right, so let's go June 17th at 7:10.
7:10.
Okay, well, remember, 7:10.
I need a motion to that effect.
Need a motion?
So moved.
17th at 7:10.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Who wants to do the motion to adjourn?
All right.
I do.
Jeff? Okay, now who wants to make that official?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I just opposed to have fun.